Hello and good morning. Or, well, I guess it's afternoon. Good afternoon. Hi. I'm here. We're going to try a craft today. I have crafting stuff. And we're going to try and make some needle felted. I got a little kit online. It's a little whale. Look at him. He's so cute. And we're going to watch some videos as well. I've been unintentionally collecting sea creatures. I've mentioned before my quab. I made them out of pipe cleaners. And then we did the craft again at work where we made pipe cleaners, and so I made a little stingray. And then I found this one on the ground and I brought him home with me. He sustained some damage. He'd been cut off. The little tips of his legs are gone, but that's okay. He's still fine. And then a client at work had a bunch of old toys he was giving away. And I was like, that lobster looks cute. And then I brought it home and I was like, my God, I've got sea creatures. So we're making a tiny whale. The origin story is basically we had a little craft night at the library, me and my mama. A lobster with big little eyes. And they were teaching needle felting. And I had a really fun time. And I made this little guy at the library based on, what they were showing us. I think he turned out really great, and then I was like, well, now I'm going to dedicate the next 3 years of my life to fucking needle felting, and that's what I'm going to do, is we're going to do some needle felting, and hopefully I don't stab myself or nothing. We're going to watch some videos while I do my little craft. Yay! I'm going to put these on so I don't stabbing myself, and this is How I Became a Liminal Space Photographer by, what the fuck was your name? Alpha Foxtrot. I don't watch most of the stuff on his channel, but this video in particular does enchant and entrance me. So we're going to watch this one. Because background noise.
Do you recognize this photo?
Anyways,
Have you been here?
It's time to stab.
Do you have an overwhelming urge to touch the objects in this photo?
Stab.
Rub your feet against the carpet, maybe? Dive into the couch? Gently caress the TV? Huh? What
You
about
just
this
stab.
one? Or this one? Or how about this one? You wanna dip your feet into that water? You wanna strip down nude and do dirty
just
things in
stab.
that water, huh?
Well, I do, and millions of other people do as well. All these photos I've shown you are liminal spaces. The concept of a liminal space is simple, not very complicated. Usually, an empty
And
space
stabbing.
from the 90s to the 2010s, devoid of people. But the feeling that these images provoke in me, good God, I don't even know if I can explain it. It's like watching the last episode of the best TV show you've ever witnessed. I mean, yeah, I'm happy I was able
It does
to
kinda
witness
look
this
like
TV
cotton
show,
candy.
but I'm also sad that I'll never be able to experience it for the first time like this ever again. I know I'll never get that moment back. These images, they remind me of the happiest moments of my life, but at the same
Make
time
him
reminds me how I'm never
round.
going to be able to experience those moments again. Like being able to look at a photo of a loved one who's passed away, but
Stabbing.
knowing that you'll never be able to fully embrace them again. Like addictive pain. Well, today I'm making it my mission to create my own goddamn liminal photos and photograph these liminal.
Yeah, the unfortunate fucking thing is that for some reason, all of these kits, they came with the needles, but they didn't come with anything to hold the needles with, so I'm just holding it, and it's not the most comfortable. Anyways, some people think liminal spaces are creepy, but also they are a huge thing on the internet. People keep fucking doing liminal space videos, and this guy wanted to submit to liminal space videos with his lovely
spaces in
background
the
of
wild in their
collage. I
natural
love it.
habitat. Now this might sound like a simple task. My friend, you are wrong. There are layers to a liminal photo. Rules that must be met. Rule number 1. The definition of liminal is relating to a transitional or initial stage of a process, occupying a position at or on both sides of a boundary threshold. Basically what this means is that a liminal space for the most part needs to take place in a transitional space, like a hallway. A hallway is just the space you walk in between the rooms you're going to. This is my backyard right here. Here's the grass, as you can see. This is the place I do stuff in. Now I need to get to my kitchen where I'm going to make breakfast. To do so, I must walk through a corridor, right through the hallway, into my kitchen right here. The reason the hallway is the transitional space is because you don't do anything in a hallway.
The editing on it is also really
Most
funny.
liminal spaces I see are gas stations and hotels, and so that doesn't make much sense. Check yourself, because it does. Where do you think most people, when you were a kid, where you would go into a gas station or go into a hotel when you were on a road trip?
I must
That's right, my
densify
friend,
him.
when you were transitioning between your house to the place you were staying. So everything in between those two places is a transitional space for you, my friend. Rule number 2: the camera
very
quality
lumpy,
of these
but that's
photos
okay. We'll
must
get there.
be garbage, complete and utter trash. You don't have to have trash quality. Garbage quality brings out the nostalgic feeling even more. So the worse the quality, the better. This was a hard step for me. I rummaged through my entire house trying to find the oldest, shittest camera I could. And I thought I had found it. See this?
Step.
This, my friend, is an iPhone 1, the original.
You just stab!
This, I thought, jackpot. Nothing's gonna get worse than then I took a couple photos. The quality is good. It's not even...
So we have this, I forget what it's fucking called. It's wool fibers that have been dyed. Does it tell me in here? In the wool booklet. The wool. It's basically raw wool that has been like washed and brushed out, but it's raw wool. You can tear it apart fairly easily. It's just a bunch of fibers all stuck together. And this needle, you can't see it because of camera quality, but there's tiny little bumps on it. There's little barbs on it. You can sort of get caught on them. I don't know if you can hear that at all. But there's little barbs on it. And as the barbs enter this fabric, it's starting to get dense and hold its shape because the fibers are clumping together and stuff. And so it's holding its shape a little bit. It's a little denser now. It's less squishy than this is. But we don't have the shape quite yet. I'm still making him. We have to make a little oval first. And you just stab it together. And the barbs will help it maintain its shape over time. I'm gonna become slightly bigger. That's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. That's the right one. I'm larger. I got bigger. Okay, anyways.
Even bad. That's actually okay. I was shocked. How could this be? But then I
I
found
don't
this.
actually need to right now.
Sony Handycam,
I'm just
9.2
stabbing.
megapixel still image recording.
The iPhone 1 had better quality photos than an actual camera
That's at least a couple years younger. Think about this for a second. This does a ton of things. This is a jack of all trades. It does lots of stuff, but it also takes photos, and the photo is just a little side part that they added in. This is an actual camera. This is a genuine camera made to take video and recording, and it's younger by like several years. But it was exactly what I needed. The photos on this thing are complete garbage, and so is the video. So I have found my vessel. Rule number 3: the lighting in the photo must come from behind the camera, as if the lighting's coming from the camera's flash itself. Now, there's no flash on this camera, so I'm just using my iPhone light and I'm doing this. But it gives the same effect. At least half of all the liminal photos I saw was in a completely dark environment where the only light came from behind the camera. I think the horrible quality and horrible lighting gives the feel of home, because it makes you feel like your dad could have taken the photo on a trip. The more professional, the worse. It's kind of like TikTok. All right, now the 4th rule will happen if you implement the first 3 rules. Nostalgia. 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 Now, at the end of this process, I'm going to test to see if I have succeeded, and I'm going to post all my photos to the liminal space subreddit on Reddit, and I'm going to see if anybody likes them, or if they provoke any nostalgia in people, and make people feel the same way I feel when I look at liminal
This is not
photos. But yeah,
a super comfortable way to hold your needles. Pro tip, go get a fucking handle. Then send me a handle. I have to wait for it to come in the mail, but I didn't want to wait. I wanted to stab!
First time I've been outside since the pandemic. I rate my chances of survival as an optimistic 65%. First liminal space I'll be taking pictures of? Bathrooms. It's one of the only liminal spaces that take place during the day. This one's tricky though, because in all the liminal space bathroom photos I see, there's always one thing off. Whether that be the toilet placement at the very corner of the room, nothing else around it, or the lights strangely not being on, or an infinite regress of bathroom stalls. There's always one thing weird. There's some nice 80s music playing right now. Really fits the vibe. I don't know how I do this secretly. Somebody sees me taking pictures in a bathroom, they're gonna wonder what's going on. I look creepy.
And stabbing and stabbing and stabbing and stabbing. You must constantly rotate as well to make sure he remains round.
So, I reviewed the liminal photos I took yesterday. They're complete trash.
They're complete
I've never been
trash.
more disappointed. As I was scrolling through the photos, it occurred to me they're just toilets. There's nothing liminal about them. The one that really hit me was the one of the dark Starbucks bathroom, because I had taken an extra step just to turn the light off. I was flipping the light switch on and off in that Starbucks bathroom for at least 10 minutes, trying to get the right angle. Those employees never looked at me the same again. And for what? This? But I'm not giving up. No. This time I've come prepared.
Big ass
Lumpy.
flashlight, ultra bright.
Whoa, whoa,
thick
wait,
with
lumpy.
3Ks. This thing's brighter than the sun. Watch this.
Can't see it.
This should be illegal. The idea is if the bathroom that I'm in isn't liminal enough, then I can just whip this thing
They
out
are
along with my
rumbling
different
upstairs.
colored
What are you
LED
doing up there?
white
It does look
shades,
sort of
hopefully
brainy.
create a liminal experience. And I don't care. I don't care if people stare at me. I don't care if there are people in the photos. And I don't care if they report me for taking photos in the women's bathroom. They look
Gotta
nicer.
be
That's
careful
not my
not to
fault.
stab myself.
Oh yeah, look at this variety. They got Walgreens, Best Buy, Costco. They even got State Farm.
Like a good neighbor, stay calm.
I'm going to be an immovable object. No bathroom and no one is safe. So day 2 was a bust. Not only were the bathrooms trash, but I was also kicked out a couple times. Apparently it's not legal to record people in the bathroom. So yeah, I mean after that I was too embarrassed to continue. So now it's time for plan B. Right now I'm at a park. You see
I
this?
think we're getting
Yeah,
there.
parks are big in liminality.
I know I say this about literally everything. Parks seriously are big.
Especially playgrounds. Only issue is right now there's a lot of children at the playground, which would be the only
Children at
spot
the
that would be
playground?
liminal. And I don't want to look like a, you know, I don't want to look like a you know,
Yeah,
kid.
that
that-
lumpy.
That's just
How
too
we
much for
doing?
me. So I've got to wait for the parents and the
Must be
children
like-
to leave. But in the meantime,
How dense are we?
are you kidding me?
One side needs to be more poked than the other side. Oh, it looks nasty. We must poke the back end. Much money.
Now 1 layer is respectable, or even 3 layers. But 8, the new COVID variant, is somewhere in this bathroom. The coast is clear. Those slides, they look like worms, like monsters. A little bit of red light should fit them well.
Extra stabs.
Alright guys, to end off this segment, I'm going to give you a lesson in liminality. Take notes. Alright, now look at this photo. There is nothing happening in this photo. This is a 2 out of 10 in liminality. But there's 3 things you can add to every single liminal photo to bump up the liminality by at least 5 points. Number 1. Grain/noise. Now this is the most basic one, but it really gets the job done. Me personally, I like to refer to this technique as making some noise. It's a bit of a controversial title for this technique. However, I think it fits perfectly because you are literally making noise in the image, making it feel more filled than it actually is. This bumps up the image in liminality from a 2 to a 4. This next technique will do a lot more. Change the color. Again, very basic step. Your nephew could think of this, but it gets the job done. Makes it feel otherworldly, like you've changed dimensions, like you're in the upside down. But this really only bumps it up another 2 points. We're
Yeah,
at
it's more of a
7.
light
But this
bulb
next
shape.
step is game changing. Adding a creature in the background. Now, this is guaranteed to force everyone looking at this image to pop a liminal boner. No one is safe. This change is so drastic it's almost shocking to the naked eye. Like McDonald's ice cream machine actually working. Like a 30-year-old wearing Dream merch. I would even advise you not to show this to your grandparents or anyone over the age of 60. Strokes are very common amongst the elderly with this change. You don't expect it. It makes you question everything. Now with these 3 simple steps, I've officially taken this photo from a 2 out of 10 in liminality to a solid 8.5 out of 10 in liminality.
I suck his dick with a smile for hours.
He's looking whale-ish, maybe. Undecided. We need to give him end tail.
It is officially day 3. Day 3 is going to be a little different than the last 2 days. Because day 3 is actually going to be about
Maybe
9 days. Because I'm
more.
going on a road trip now. Do you remember what I said about road trips?
Transitioning between your house to the place you were staying. So everything in between those 2 places is a transitional space for you, my friend.
Yeah, that's right. The
much
entire
do we
thing
need for a
between
tail,
here and
huh?
my destination is all a transitional space. This opens so many so many opportunities for me. Now, I'm going to meet my grandma. Just so happens my grandma lives in a state with lots of grass.
did get my
This is
scissors,
good
but
because
they're
I live
right-
in a
they're right
desert,
here.
and deserts are not liminal. All the liminal photos I
Raw
see have
hamburger.
grass and sidewalks and in suburban
Snip,
neighborhoods
snip,
with
snip.
wooden fences, and that's just not where I live. That is not Nevada. I didn't know if I was gonna do this because it's 9 days. It's a 9-day road trip. So that's another 9 days I'm not posting anything. You guys probably thought I abandoned you, but I haven't. All right, I'm still here. Daddy hasn't left remote just yet. I'm really committing to this video. I had no plans that it
And
would
we'll make
last
that a
this long.
tail.
But God damn it,
A
I'm
little
getting
whale
liminal
tail.
photos. I will get liminal
Tail
photos.
for a
Let's
whale.
do this.
You can do it without the finger covers. Just be very careful not to stab yourself. Okay, I'm putting it back on my fingers covers because I'm scared of stabbing
Not
myself.
the first hotel. All I can say
Yeah.
is I'm glad I came
Luckily,
here
there's
just
some
to-
extra. I probably won't use all of this. Like, I don't think I'm going to use any more of the pink.
Hotels are big in liminality.
Then I
They
have
might be the
extra
biggest
for if I
category,
want to make
actually.
something
The
else.
staircase is liminal, but look at this. Roof access. This is something I gotta check out.
Stab that tail, stab that tail, stab that tail.
No cameras, no sign. What? I might actually open this door right now. Damn it. Doesn't matter. The place is still super liminal.
Stab the middle a bunch.
Is
You could
anyone
have
else
to
getting a liminal
shave.
boner right now? Now, who would put the ice dispenser in the washer and dryer in the same room? My mom couldn't have picked a better hotel. I didn't even tell her I was doing a liminal video. I mean, look at this. Oh, I gotta stop before I climax.
Stabbing, stabbing, stabbing. I could make a big whale. It's just a pink colored whale. He's just pink because it's a cute color and he's beautiful that way. It's just, that's the pattern I'm sort of using, mostly.
Dude, this gym is straight out of, I don't know, 1990, 2004. Gray, colorless machinery, old, beaten up yoga ball, nut sweat on the bench press machine. It doesn't get better than this.
Stab, 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 stab.
And here we are in present day. The results are in. I already posted the photos I saw fit to be liminal onto the liminal space subreddit, and they've already done as they have done. So here's what happened. First thing I did was I went through every single one of my photos. Yes, I looked for liminality in the raw photo itself, but I was also looking for ways to tweak the photo to make it more liminal. Now this process took me a couple hours, but when it was all said and done, I had decided which photos I would
like a
post
little
onto
heart.
the subreddit. And out of a grand total of 397 individual photographs, I found approximately three that I found fit to be liminal. I just dedicated 3 months of my life to do one thing and one thing only: take liminal photos. I went to haunted houses, I went to my grandma's, I went to at least 1,000 bathrooms, hotels, parks at night, Dillard's, and out of all of that, three of the photos were good, but not even the raw photo. No, it took hours of Photoshop to make these presentable. Let's start with the least promising, this one. Now the real photo doesn't actually look that different from the edited photo. All I did was tweak up the redness, add some grain, and then make the figure,
What a
in the middle of the
dude.
screen a little more ominous and seeable. In the end, I didn't think it was really that liminal. It just kind of creeped me out when I looked back on it. But even before I posted it, I wasn't expecting much from it, okay? Second most promising was one of the stairwells of a hotel that I stayed at. Now again, the raw photo, trash, garbage, nothing there. But I knew if I edited the little zero in on that sign and then put a little face in the window, oh, perfection. Now this one I had high hopes for, okay? This one meets all the requirements. It's a hotel stairwell, it's creepy, and technically it fits into the lore of the backrooms because of the level 0 sign. But the crown jewel, my friends. I even knew when I got done editing this photo it was good. I knew this photo was a banger. Infinity Suburban. Now, you might be like, whoa, Alpha, you did that? But you don't understand the improvement I made to this photo. I mean, it is like night and day. This is the real photo. Bland, sad. I mean, it almost looks black and white when compared to what I did. Just look at the improved one, and then look at the real one. For this photo, I bumped up my Photoshop skills from a 5 to a 7. I put my soul in that photo. But now it had come time to post them. Out of nearly 400 photos, I narrowed it down to 3 that were
Try
even
not to
slightly
stab yourself.
liminal. Every other photo was garbage, trash,
especially the bathroom ones, which is what I spent the most
How we
goddamn
doing?
time on. So confident was not the word I would
Does that
use
look like
when
a
I
good
posted
sized
these
tail
photos
for
onto
ya?
the subreddit. But I took a deep breath, put my feelings aside, and I posted the photo. But wait, what's that? 13, 3, and 5 upvotes in the first hour. Maybe these photos weren't as bad as I thought, but I'll give it some more time. 2 hours. The house photo appears to still be gaining, with a now 21 upvotes. The rest of the photos, however, are falling into obscurity,
Now we
and have
must
failed
attach
to really
it.
go past what they were 1 hour ago.
Attach
There's a
the
possibility this might be
tail.
okay. 4th hour. What is this? The house photo is at the front page of the subreddit? Ranking 7th with 52 upvotes? Sweet Jesus, this might be going somewhere.
Let's just calm down, okay? Hold our horses real quick. We don't want to get too excited. We don't want to get ahead of
Attach his
ourselves. This could mean
tail.
nothing.
5th hour!
You
My
need your
God, it's at 100 upvotes now! And now it's 5th on the front page! It's almost certain to succeed at this point. There's no way anybody can miss it now. There's no way this can get any better. There's no way. What? Alpha Chad 69? Is that 69 karma? My prayers have been bad! So yeah! The planets have aligned! There's no way! There's no way this gets any better! Oh! 600! 600 upvotes! It's at the top of the subreddit! What? At this rate, it'll be at 1,000 by tomorrow! The little gods have heard! They have! I posted this photo 20 hours ago and it's already on its way to being ingrained in liminal culture forever! My work has paid off! Wait. What is this? Removed? What do you mean removed? Alpha Chad 69. Thank you for your submission. Unfortunately, it has been removed for violating the following rules. Oh dear. Oh no. I must have unknowingly broken one of the rules. Oh my gosh, what have I done? What, did I not put the right flair? Did I make another unintentionally homophobic title? Please, not again. Rule 2. Let's see this. What is this unbreakable rule 2 that I have unforeseeably broken? No off topic or not safe for work content.
He's
What?
looking more like a
Surely
whale.
there's more. Yes, here we go. All right, a liminal space is the time between the what was and the next. It is a place of transition, waiting, and not knowing. Liminal spaces where all transformation takes
So
place.
then I guess
If
we can start
learn
adding
to wait and let
details.
it. What? Huh? So here's what makes no goddamn sense about this. So just by their own definition, liminal spaces need to be transitioning points, but they don't ever define what a transitioning point is. Their most
gonna give him a
popular
little white
post of all
belly.
time, with the most upvotes, is a bingo hole. Now you explain to me how a bingo hole is in any way a transitional space.
The
It is
rage has
physically and
come.
metaphorically not a transitional space and does not take place in the middle of anybody's life. Okay, if anything, you'll be playing bingo at the end of your life when you're 90. And if you keep going down, what you'll notice is that all of the popular posts are not, in their definition, liminal. It doesn't meet the requirement. This is a safe bunker for when nukes come. This is a fucking school. This is the goddamn Oval Office. What are you talking about? Not transitional. Not transitional. That's not transitional. He's
That's
not
just
transitional.
a-
What do you say about him? Okay, that's not transitional.
Yeah, we'll
That's
have the
a me,
unicorn
for
horn in a
God's
minute. It's a
sake.
narwhal,
Okay,
technically.
What's up, subreddit gods, moderators? How many other great liminal photos have been taken down from this stupid subreddit? Okay, first of all, there never has actually ever been an absolute definition. There never has. All right, watch any liminal space video
White
on
belly.
YouTube. Nobody knows what it is because most of liminal spaces aren't even transitional space. That's why I said in the beginning of the video that it doesn't have to be a transitional space. Okay, literally, the only
It
actual
was
requirement liminal
manufactured
photos
in
need to
China,
follow-
They need to
apparently.
invoke a sense of nostalgia in you.
That's it. That's all, dude. I started this video.
But this is the box I got. Well, actually, I should not show that because that shows my name and address. Let me just dox myself real quick. Guanzo Tradema Trading Code, LTD. I don't know. I found it on Amazon. I just looked on Amazon. I'm feeding the capitalism
With
beast.
one
I'm
goal.
sorry.
I wanted to spread my liminal love. I wanted to make people feel the same way I feel when I look at these liminal photos. That remind me of better, happier times in my life. And when I finally get the chance to do it, when I finally, after months of work, succeed, the liminal gods smite my post down. And how dare they? How dare they pick and choose what is liminal and what's not? How dare they act as the gatekeepers of liminality? I went all over the country, explored the most obscure liminal spaces there were. If anyone has the right to define liminality,
I must
it's me.
stab
So here it
him.
is. Liminality is any photo that reminds you how it feels to be a child again. To have no stress, no responsibilities, no worries. A time when just existing was enough. You didn't have to prove yourself with degrees, scholarships, medals. None of that mattered. You were just happy to be alive. And that's what these photos should remind you of. A time before that all too familiar existential void creeped up into your life. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you for the TED Talk. That one just tickles me. Isuko video. Now he's got this big fluffy mess. Snip. Snip. Goodbye. Now I just have a bunch of loose fucking wool everywhere. Minecraft! Minecraft weapons! Alright, this is 1 second of every H-Bomber Reggae video.
A forest fire!
A forest fire!
You look like twats. No, come back! Two Hitlers with
Two Hitlers!
face with his dog.
With his dog!
Tracer's butt. Shooting a man in the face.
I'm a big boy now.
Impersonates a woman. Fucking mouth! Superior reasoning. Here's a shot of what a terrifying fate. Nanny?
Nanny? I think I might want the white to be big gore.
Please.
That one just fucking kills me.
Easy to please.
Easy to please. It's so funny. I love unhinged internet personalities.
His face is stupid.
Not knowing sports thing joke.
Hyperactive child.
Thanks, Canada.
Doctor Who. Brussels.
Milk is weird.
Pajama Watson. Who did this and what? This little fucker, the sperm lord. You piss. Who did this and this little fucker, the sperm lord. You piss boy.
I love that that's the end of the video. It's the end of the original video that comes from anyways. Should we go watch that? Actually, I put it on my playlist. I put a bunch of shit on this playlist. Where is it? Where is it? This one.
Hi, I'm Harriton.
We'll figure it out. We're gonna watch some Harriton Splimbly. We're gonna do some serious lore analysis of Control-Alt-Delete. While I stab my little whale. Sip, sip, sip. Sip, 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 sip.
Oh, fucking...
Hippa!
Just fucking...
You can do it, Harriton. Fix your machines. This one is so fucking cool. Crafts for everybody.
Pay for what you have done.
It's craft time. Gently stabbing so as not to stab myself. Oh my god, the special effects! B.
Today on Serious Lore Analysis, we're covering a creative work that I heavily implied might have been coming next in the last few videos. And that's right, today we're covering the Control-Alt-Delete webcomic and animated series. In retrospect, I think I might have made it too obvious. For those of you too young to remember the early days of the world, before we had the internet and hadn't yet achieved the dream of having to argue with Holocaust deniers all day, humans would amuse themselves by painting stuff on the walls of their caves or later drawing it onto paper or canvas. These scribbles became known as Eventually, however, humans evolved past this bullshit and realized you could divide up your space into smaller subspaces called parnels, and then use that to create several sequential images, which when read in order could tell a story. This sequence art later became known as comics, for reasons we forgot because it doesn't matter. Fast forward to the late 90s and early 2000s, where we played video games and things were finally good. Then people who enjoyed video games gained access to the internet. But because they didn't yet have the bandwidth to play most games online or watch puppy compilations all day and argue in the comments about 9/11, people instead would amuse themselves online by using webcomics, also known as digital versions of comics that you find on the web. And since the bar for publishing onto the internet was as low as being able to afford server hosting, or even lower if you used a free website, people were finally free to create comics for as small or niche an audience as they liked without any need for mass market appeal, or the production costs of ink and paper and printing, or, quality. Enter the gaming webcomic, a form of webcomic centering around jokes about games and gaming culture. The most popular of these was Penny Arcade, a comic still going to this day, rife with hilarious and well thought out humor. Don't stake me, bro?
Don't stake me, bro?
It's just like The Thing, with the guy. The bedrock of this type of comic tends to feature several characters, often representative of the authors, sitting on a couch making hilarious jokes about video games that are out right now, or inside the fiction of a video game, interacting with it to hilarious consequences. These two forms were the bedrock of many early gaming webcomics from the late 90s to the early 2000s, and there were many successful comics using this format, like Penny Arcade, PvP, Little Gamers, Bob and George, 8-Bit Theatre, and others. All tremendous pieces of art with a lot to say about games and how bad it is that our games are being usurped by money men, and how funny it would be if you died in a way a lot like it's just like in the game. But for every one of these comics, there were dozens of poor imitators out to replicate their popularity and profit by reusing the same tropes. An explosion in the gaming webcomic had begun, and it would continue for over a decade. Enter Tim Buckley with his own webcomic, Control-Alt-Delete, often referred to as CAD. CAD isn't like the other webcomics. It's not art. It doesn't have value or meaning. It's trash, and it doesn't say anything at all. It's full of worthless jokes where the punchline is violence. It's not like Penny Arcade. CAD is the story of Ethan, a character who looks suspiciously like how Buckley draws himself. Ethan and his roommate Lucas talk about video games and occasionally are inside the games where something bad happens to them or people they don't like. Wow, that's original. Let's compare and contrast this with a good comic, shall we? In this 2002 page from Penny Arcade, the author insert characters burn a voodoo doll, hurting George Romero. Oh my god, look how much better these guys are, this is great. Meanwhile, look over here at CAD in the slow lane for idiots. Using violence as a punchline? What a stupid thing to put in a comic! Over time, CAD stopped even trying to tell jokes, and it started spending more and more time exploring the personal lives and development of its characters. The main characters, Ethan and Lucas, went on dates, moved apartments, made and lost friends, and started long-term relationships. Ethan quickly meets and begins dating Lila, a girl who plays video games, which, as we all know, is like finding a unicorn. And, like all girls who do play games, it's her only character trait. The two inexplicably fall in love even though Ethan has nothing to offer anyone and is basically unlikable. It's pretty clear from reading this that Buckley doesn't know how human relationships work. You could almost point out that this almost says something about how people who play video games a lot view human relationships, but...
He's got a little fin. Yay!
No, it's bad, and it doesn't mean anything. Tim Buckley is just really bad at making comics. Oh, also, despite being basically unable to do anything but play video games, Ethan eventually builds a sentient AI robot who becomes the fourth main character. Zeke exists to occasionally joke about how humans are made of meat and bad and he's better than them. It's clearly inspired by characters like HK-47 from KOTOR or Bender from Futurama, but there's no actual jokes here. It's what I like to call a joke by association. It's not really a joke, it's just a vague gesture in the direction of a joke that you might remember from somewhere else. Somewhere else. I'm somewhere else.
Existential nightmare of a video, but I love it. This is art, is what real art looks like, guys. I know. I in fact have the gamer disease. I play games all the fucking time. But it really, like, especially in like the 2010s, like I've probably shared it at one point. I joined voice chat on this was an Overwatch 1, but I just joined voice chat for like 2 seconds to be like, kill the Ana, or, you know, whatever the fuck you say on Overwatch voice chat, and I immediately just, like, 3 or 4 people on my team started just flaming me. They were like, oh my god, you're a girl, and just, like, all that sort of bullshit. I was like, wow, sexism is alive and well. Girls aren't allowed to play video games. But there was also a large amount of female players in Overwatch 1 and in Overwatch 2. I'm just talking about that experience. And sometimes you'd be like, hey, it's me, another woman, but it would still be, like, somewhat rare. It's weird. I'm glad that it's not quite as bad now, but definitely you have to be careful if you're a woman playing video games, especially some of the more sort of popular ones. Like, I think Rainbow Six Siege, I've heard, has a really bad attitude toward women most of the time. This is generalizations, but some of the, like, more do-bro games will still be really cruel if you just happen to be a woman and talk. Yeah, their safe space, whatever. Anyways, let's watch him get murdered.
Why are you doing this?
So we're
Don't
gonna
do
get
this to yourself.
eyeballs, I think.
Don't become one of them.
Yep.
One of what?
You give him my balls in a little.
The worst thing about this comic is that it doesn't know what it wants to be. No, wait, actually the worst thing is CAD Premium. For a few years, you could pay a monthly fee to get access to episodes of the CAD animated series, which the comic inexplicably had. It ran for 2 seasons, and some episodes ran up to 6 minutes. If you thought a story featuring cartoon violence, a futuristic killer robot, video game opinions on a couch, and awkward, boring, serious relationship drama had trouble finding its identity in comic form, just wait until it comes in a box set containing barely 2 hours of animation made in about a week that you paid $35 entire of your actual human money for. 3 episodes of the 12-episode first season are dedicated entirely to an extended Star Wars reference. They reenact an entire Star Wars film in each 5-minute episode, compressing it down so much you'd barely even realize that's what they're doing unless you listen to the director's commentary track, which this show has, for some reason. The villain, instead of Darth Vader, is Jack Thompson, a lawyer who tried to sue game developers for making their players violent. The Death Star is a sign that makes people stop playing video games?
It's time to test the power of this fully operational anti-gamer billboard.
Speaking of Jack Thompson, Thompson appeared to have struck a nerve with Buckley. One page of the comic is straight up an open letter to Jack, a 4-panel long mini-novel spoken directly by Buckley himself from within the comic. What's amazing about it is how it manages to, while claiming gamers are peaceful even though they've played a lot of violent games, ends with the threatening phrase, "Don't fuck with us." Which, by the way, is also a line from that scene in Fight Club where they threaten to cut off a guy's testicles if he defies them.
Do not fuck with us.
Imagine writing something like that and thinking, yeah, that proves that gamers are peaceful and intelligent and can be reasoned with. It almost says something about gamers when people sit down and write things like that. Where's that fucking noise coming from? Where's...
This was the origin of the wallpaper gags. Or, to an extent, I guess.
Don't you think you might be reading a little too much into it? About what a bad comic that sucks might say? Stick to thinking about real art. Ugh, this is just like that Sonic thing, isn't it?
The Sonic thing?
You're overthinking a blue hedgehog, man. Why can't you be objective? Why can't you talk about the level design and mechanics instead? You could be talking about how Mario 1-1 teaches you how to play it.
But it's not just a hedgehog, is it? I mean, it's animals
Dinner time.
fighting a developed machine
Have a good
empire.
dinner.
Like, there's very, very obvious themes going on here. A discussion of ecology versus technology.
If you want to talk about how great nature is and how bad technology is, why don't you go live in the woods? You wouldn't do that though, would you? You wouldn't have your precious lattes to drink while you complain on your iPhone about capitalism.
I don't drink lattes. What the fuck are you talking about?
By now, you've probably noticed a fairly strong contradiction in the comic between the crass, random, non-canon of the many parts intended purely for no-strings-attached comedy, the serious parts where Buckley himself definitely doesn't personally threaten someone, and the actual serious lives of the main characters who have problems that don't go away. The comic keeps reverberating back and forth, going to further and further extremes. Sometimes you'd get a story where Lucas goes on a date with a woman who turns out to be fat, so he awkwardly pretends to be interested for hilarious comedy, and then they go back to her place and it turns out she was only pretending to be fat as a test, and they start a relationship that lasts for 5 years of the comic. Then you'd get a chef character saying nonsense for a joke, and then something random happens. Or maybe you'd get the players, 4 characters whose whole deal is they murder each other in different ways over and over. Then it turns out Ethan's girlfriend is pregnant. Then they joke about what if the guns in the new Gears of War game were guns with trains instead of chainsaws. You snap back and forth so quickly, you get whiplash of the mind. The tension between the comic's supposed reality and meaningless comic fantasy world eventually snapped when, during a scene at Ethan's job where he's making a joke about consumers being stupid and not knowing as much about games as him, he gets a phone call. Lila, the comedy video game girlfriend character, is in the hospital because she's had a miscarriage. This culminates in, perhaps, the most well-known page of a comic in history.
There it is! Lost.jpg, baby!
When asked by a noted art scholar the appropriate distance from which to stand when viewing his magnum opus, plainly entitled Loss, Tim Buckley famously responded, "What? Fuck you," and banned me from his forum.
Banned me from his forum.
The release of Loss profoundly shook the edifice of its audience. People were equal parts shocked, horrified, surprised, offended, and completely mystified.
The semi-serious but still mostly jokey plot parts of the story are utterly shattered, giving way to a harsh and cold reality where characters in other contexts have committed or received tremendous acts of violence are suddenly capable of a genuine moment of horrific suffering. A comic famous for using too many words to say nothing at all about a video game on a stationary couch takes 4 panels and 0 words to show a horrifying discovery and a trip through an entire hospital. A gaming webcomic, a comedy gaming webcomic, has an arc in it about the characters having to deal with the miscarriage of their child. This comic struck a nerve on the internet. Over 9 years later, people are still making fun of it. This comic has been parodied and referenced in memes an uncountable amount of times. Entire web pages have been dedicated to tracking them all and failed to contain them. In the next 2 comics, the characters struggle to even react to what has happened. It's breaking my heart to watch her hurt like this. The next comic is a joke about how there aren't enough dragons in Dungeons & Dragons anymore. The next comic is a single panel of the 4 players about to murder each other. For the next little while, the comic switched between dumb video game jokes and Buckley trying desperately to restore the comfortable, consequence-free tone he had developed over the 5 years of the comic. It takes at least 8 pages before Ethan can go back to making goggles out of pineapples. By late November, the characters have fully patched up their problems and they get married, and we get tearful speeches about how important these characters are to each other.
Life dropped an epic husband.
God, the cringe.
The rarest of its loot table. And I was lucky enough to win the need roll.
For about 4 years, the comic was basically standalone silly jokes interspersed with bits where there were mini-comics set in a universe like Star Wars for some reason.
One could say that with the advent of Loss, a lesson had been learned. Don't put one of the most emotionally traumatizing events a human can experience in your comedy gaming webcomic!
Then, in September 2012, Ethan tries to build a time machine, and a future version of Ethan comes through it and kidnaps him into the future. The next 2 months of comics were an extended storyline in which it turns out that Ethan's actions destroy most of humanity, as the robot he builds eventually goes insane and murders everyone he loves and takes over the world. But in the process, the time machine is damaged and threatens to destroy all of time, So Ethan has to sacrifice himself to turn the machine off, killing him and saving the future, as his inner monologue makes a tearful goodbye to a character no one really cares about because she's basically just written to be a love interest for the author stand-in. Ethan, our main character, dies. He dies in the most convoluted fashion possible, and no one ever learns what happened. Now that's how you end a gaming webcomic. Except it didn't end. It's still been going for 5 more years, but with just the self-contained sketches and the characters from the old version in a rebooted form. The comic somehow continues to limp on. It literally killed its main character, and then it just sort of started again.
So, that was Cad. Cad was mean-spirited, hateful, and angry. Cad was a judgmental, tone-deaf, self-righteous screed of a webcomic. And... wait.
I'm warning you. Don't do this, man. Don't go there.
Sorry, are you talking to someone? Is there someone here?
Doesn't Cad say something about gamer culture?
Stop! No! No! What have you done?
What's happening?
Snip!
My name is Tim Buckley. I'm a 24-year-old kid. I've played every violent game in existence. I have never killed anyone. There were millions of gamers just getting sick of
Who's behind the mask? He's so tiny and delicate.
Hi, I'm Heriton Splimby, and welcome to... What the fuck is happening? Tommy Wiseau's infamous film, The Room, asks some really interesting questions about how we look at art. No, seriously, come on!
Stay with me!
In terms of pure filmmaking skill, of course, it's awful. The script is a nightmare, it's poorly edited, with random shots of San Francisco just kinda slammed in there. It has such below-average shot composition and mise-en-scène that I actually feel bad for even saying those words. And the ADR is terrible too.
Yeah, can I have a dozen red roses, please?
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you. Here you go.
That's me. How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Keep the change. Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
It has a reputation for being a hilariously bad film everyone can laugh at for being bad. Made even more interesting by the incredibly weird performance of Wiseau.
I'm fed up with this world.
But I think, under the proper lens, the film has a little more to say to its audience than, look at me, I'm so
There we
bad.
go.
Tommy Wiseau didn't write a film about
Pointy
a
little
perfect guy
horn.
who gets cheated on by his girlfriend and basically has his life ruined for no reason. And he didn't
have
choose
the
to play
little
that perfect
eyeballs.
guy for no reason either. And here, taking a particular critical look, I think a valuable message can be learned from the film. The film has often been criticised in terms of its base components, like writing or acting. Lisa, for example, behaves completely irrationally or perhaps with deliberate malice towards Johnny.
I have him wrapped around my little finger.
Well, you should be happy then.
But I don't love him.
Suddenly falling out of love with him and cheating on him and then
Come
spreading
out,
lies about him
little
for
eyeball.
seemingly no reason.
He gave us a bonus.
You're lying. I never hit you. You are tearing me
apart, Lisa.
Why are you so hysterical?
I contend here that Wiseau based the play script that would later become the film on an
There we go.
actual life experience.
So now we're
an
supposed to
actual breakup that really happened at some point in his life.
give him some more eyeballs.
And you stabbed me in the back. I love you and I did anything for you to just please you. And now you betray me. How could you love it?
The events happened exactly as Tommy writes them. In fact, they definitely didn't.
Here we go, an
Tommy
eyeball.
didn't kill himself, and obviously women don't grow distant from the people they're in a relationship with for no reason.
Women change their minds all the time.
The Room is a fictionalized, exaggerated representation of what Tommy thinks happened in this real relationship, being completely, perhaps even incoherently honest about why he thinks it fell apart. And it's clear that he thinks it fell apart because his girlfriend started acting weird and crazy and trying to hurt him. What's important here is to understand that, to Tommy, this is genuinely how he views this woman. This character is to him an honest expression of that person. But there has to have been a real Lisa once, and her perspective, her side of the story, isn't told. We don't get to see
Get
the
in
things
there.
Tommy did that led her to move on from him or cheat on him, and we only have Tommy's word that he wasn't abusive and was a really good guy. And maybe the fact he genuinely thought to depict this woman as a monster trying to ruin his life says something about how he understands other people and their feelings. The Room, precisely with its unrealistic, biased inaccuracy, accurately depicts
Squishing the whole
why
thing, trying to get the
breakups
eyeball in.
actually happen.
Whee!
People don't fully understand
It's
how the other
sticking
person
out.
feels and begin to think of them as malicious figures because that's the only way we can make sense of people when we don't fully understand them. I've talked to plenty of guys about breakups, and very often you get the same old story just like this one, where their partner turned out to be a crazy bitch who just wanted to hurt them. But if you're ever lucky enough to hear the other side of a story like that, they're often just frustrated with people who can so easily view them like that if they have a few arguments. Wiseau tried to make a film about his breakup, but it turned out to be a film about his inability to understand why it happened.
No.
Trying not to stab myself.
No.
The Room is a filmed version of the real, heavily distorted perspective on breakups that many heterosexual men often have, and in many ways, when you look at the film this way, it serves as a call to action to learn to see past the Lisas we think we see, and understand that relationships tend
Okay,
to
he
fall
looks a
apart
little
for
lopsided,
a reason,
but it's
and we can learn to
fine.
get better by seeing people for who they are, for all its actual flaws, and even because of some of its clearly deeply flawed misogynistic writing.
It's fine.
The Room ends up being an actually
fine. I'm not gonna
valuable
freak out.
demonstration of the distorted ways people perceive relationships and how this eventually destroys
think he's
them
done,
better
honestly.
than any film made by, say, I don't know, any man
He's a
actually
little
working in Hollywood
not
right
quite as
now,
round.
especially the ones currently cashing in on the popularity of The Room.
Hi.
Foot
I'm
lost in house phone. I might just stab his little head so he's a little flatter.
As you might be aware, EA recently closed Visceral Games, the studio working on a Star Wars game that had been in the works for a long time, being worked on by, among many others, the director and writer of most of the Uncharted games, but also one of the best written game series ever, Legacy of Kain, and pivoting the entire
off of
game
me.
away from what was being made. This update, posted on EA's website by Patrick Suderland, vice president of EA, cites fundamental shifts in the marketplace. Single-player linear experiences simply aren't profitable enough, at least compared to certain other recent kinds of experience that emphasize time investment and incentivize further transactions made over the course of a single product rather than a simple one-off purchase. This is one of many management decisions that exists in a marketplace driven by the forces inherent to a capitalist society. The decision is, sadly, the result of the overall company goal to continue to grow and satisfy investors.
We reached the anti-capitalism part of the H-bomb video.
And this practice trumps creative freedom.
Look
or
how much I
what
got left
games
over.
players might
Yay.
actually want to see. Penny Arcade covered this story by featuring one of the two main characters, a stand-in for the author, directly, personally calling Patrick Suderland an
You probably make a second
incoherent,
one if I wanted.
art-destroying monster. Literally, the only thing I know about you is that you destroy things. Jobs, art. I mean, where should I even start?
Get back in
What
there.
you did is bad for games, bad for gamers, and trying to frame it as anything but cowardice is offensive. Penny Arcade is consistently cited as far better than CAD, because CAD's just a bunch of nonsensical rants, and it keeps just using violence as a punch. No, wait, this is Penny Arcade's violence. How did this get in here? This is obviously hilarious. Oh my god, he was killed by a gun. Here's to another 2 decades of comedy gold and insightful commentary on the future of gaming. Penny Arcade got so popular and influential on the back of this stuff that its convention, PAX, is one of the biggest industry events of the year, with even major companies showing off games there. CAD also had a convention of its own for a couple of years, labelled Digital Overload. And, I hesitate to admit, things don't get popular enough to have an entire convention without
go get
being
another
at
one.
least partially accurate reflections of their audience.
Control Alt Delete kicks ass.
Wait. It's like right over there. It's right over there. Is that too bright? Probably. still shining a bit too much. How's our light looking? It's basically nothing. I don't know. Already it's getting darker in my room. I can't see, but I don't want to. The desk is very shiny. And the overhead lights are causing an issue. You could go on to keyboard. These are the other ones. There's some boards. Board these. Whoa, birdies.
I think it's awesome. I've been reading it for a while and it incorporates a lot of the best things in life as well as things.
I hope the problem here is clear.
You have three
Even
different
the most
birds.
Intelligent, well-paid, popular, and the writers gaming culture has to offer seem unaware that these decisions are not made in a vacuum, that games are threatened not by a secretive
I want to do the little
anti-art
artistic
coward,
penguin.
but by an environment that systematically
Very
crushes
cute.
most of the people who work on them in order to make its owners and shareholders vastly
Yeah!
rich, and which
Mel
is
just
ruined
very
for
reflective.
anything's intrinsic value. Gaming culture is largely unable to conceive of this level of socioeconomic criticism, of analysis of systemic
I have two
problems
of
and
these.
wider issues with society beyond one person's individual failings, and therefore cannot accurately fathom exactly what is damaging the things they love. Instead, they have to fantasize about their very own Lisa hiding somewhere in EA, trying to kill art like some kind of fucking Disney villain. This is why people hate CAD so much. Not because it's bad. No, bad things come and go all day, every day. CAD is such a source of focus and aggression, with millions and millions of words written about how awful it and its creator is, because it's an embarrassment.
I think these might be from the same
It makes
company. They're
everyone
pretty
else
similar.
near it look bad, because as bad as it is, it managed to be honest. So people have to try as hard as they can to project these things away from them, try to shift the blame onto Buckley himself,
Face
and
is
away
grey.
from the fact they share a lot of the same perspectives.
Little board.
Think again about that Jack Thompson comic. No one just ends up in a position where they'll write something like this all on their own. Jack Thompson, wrong and dishonest as he was, received thousands of death threats and messages full of harassment for years from people just like Tim, or
we
people
want
who
him
had
to
been
be?
influenced by this comic. No, CAD is merely a particularly silly and vulgar expression of a broader set of bad ideas that continue
Sleepy
to
to
go
speak.
largely unexamined by the people who hold them. Tim Buckley's disjointed
Yes, good
personal
size.
philosophy and lack of skill didn't come from nowhere. We don't get to pretend he's just some random guy. Blaming one man for the flaws of a broken economic system is making the same mistake as blaming Tim Buckley for accurately presenting the culture in which he
misstep
exists.
for 20
We just have to learn to
years.
accept that there might be a lesson in things we hate about us, that even if it's bad and we don't like it, we have more in common with it than we want to admit, and can even learn something from it. CAD turned out to be reflective of the cultural reality that produced it, and people are only angry at it this much because they don't like what they saw in the mirror.
Get in there, get in there, get in there. What's your craft? Is it making computer cables or whatever you were doing? We must end round him. Yes, I failed again! Oh. Well, you're trying your best. That's all you can do. This will definitely be easier with the handle. Oh boy, here we go. Here it comes.
When we look at ridiculous behavior within our sphere, instead of trying to project it out
Not there
of
quite yet.
ourselves, say it's just some random idiot somewhere doing something dumb, maybe we should accept that CAD, Penny Arcade, Visceral Games, and even EA's business decisions are aspects of a wider culture that can be reflective of our own feelings and beliefs and values, even if we don't like what comes out of them. And maybe if we learn to criticize ourselves and change our own behavior, we can start to change the wider culture.
I'm sweaty from all the stabbing.
Thank you for your time.
Oh boy. Oh boy!
I must set aright that which has been made wrong.
Conclusion of this video cracks me up. It makes a genuinely really deep point. That's one thing I really like about this guy's channel. It's like, even the worst of media reflects something of human nature. You can never really say, well, this is just bad. It was made by a person.
Please, forgive me. You are my world, my best friend, the love of my life. I promise. I promised I would never hurt you. That I would never leave you.
Acting! Give him an Oscar!
I have to break that promise. I'm so sorry. Video games.
Video games.
I love you.
Here it is. Nasty as shit! You did it! Good job! He's celebrating! He's being born and celebrating you!
It's time.
The Sonic makeup. Yes! Yes! Thank you, Harris Bomber Guy and Sam. Whatever's other person. Your name went by too fast! Fucking phenomenal. Look at it! We have a little circle! And some density along these sides. I'm so glad you made the cable. Good job. That seems like a really hard thing to do. I would not know how to do that myself. Let me just get a bump to the Patreon outro. Harrington Splimby will return! Did he ever return after that? I forget. What was the other ones? The War on Christmas was funny.
Happy Halloween, Paisan!
No, we're crafting different things. PBMF is making some, like, internet cables or something? What are they? Some kind of computer cables? I don't know. They sent me a diagram, and I did not understand what the diagram was fucking about. I don't know, I think we can probably add the other stuff to him now. pretty shaped.
Oh, I'm definitely not going to get this video finished on time.
Maybe like slightly
Happy
more
holidays, friends, enemies, frenemies, and splenemies. Harris Bomber Guy here. Christmas. Christmas.
Making more egg.
Christmas!
Become egg.
Okay, right, I can explain. I recorded the Halloween segment of that video as a funny joke about how it takes me a while to make videos, and then I actually missed last Christmas.
2 Christmas hats on his hand for no reason.
So here we are in the apocalypse. Let's all watch last year's Christmas video. This year, now that it's done, this means I technically got a seasonal video out on time, which means I'm good at my job. Fuck you.
So good at your job.
I'm just chilling out here in my house, enjoying the best that the clearance aisle had to offer. This Fortnite Funko Pop Tower Recon Specialist. Okay. This tasteful Coraline mug you can drink out of Coraline's head. Start off your morning routine with Coraline. Not dishwasher or microwave safe. And this Friends makeup set, where every color is a reference to a show that ended 15 years ago. Fukuyama was right. History ended in 2004 when Rachel got off the plane. And yes, I'm actually going to give this as a gift at my family Secret Santa this year.
Not to stab myself.
I guess you know who got you your gift, Luke. I hope you've seen Friends. I also hope you'll stop being such a Ross. But the sad thing is, when I give my family these gifts, which are as good as they deserve, on Christmas Day, I won't even be allowed to say Merry Christmas as I do it, because of the liberal, communist, atheist conspiracy to destroy the Christian religion by eroding its traditions. Political correctness, whoever that is, literally says it's racist to say Christmas now.
It's definitely what everything's saying.
I reckon is happening, and that's the same thing as checking. Our culture is being crushed underfoot by radicals who want to destroy polite society to achieve their own ends. Oh, those hecking, gosh darned, flipping bastards.
Christianity comes under attack.
There's a war on Christmas.
They outlawed Merry Christmas a few years ago,
and you know it.
Christmas becomes ever more about shallow displays of political correctness.
Happy holidays, not Merry Christmas. Kids no longer have Christmas vacation, holiday vacation. Christmas parties, holiday parties.
The war on Christmas.
Whoever's watching this right now, think of something you love that brings you a sense of peace and decency, and they will somehow link it to the patriarchy and the rest of their politically correct nonsense.
Christianity is being bigoted against.
Being bigoted against.
You couldn't even say Merry Christmas at Walmart.
Obama said Merry Christmas a few times, but he still made sure to neuter the Christmas cards and also the Christmas decorations at the White House.
What we're seeing happening has been a recent phenomenon, the war on Christmas, the war against religious liberty.
Of course it's a war on Christmas.
Christmas has lost all meaning thanks to cultural Marxism.
It's those bloody cultural Marxists ruining everything again. That's why society's getting worse. It can't possibly be because of the policies of the people who keep getting elected. But don't worry, peace-loving citizens. I'm here to lead the charge in fighting back against these imaginary ghosts. So grab a slice of anonymous holiday meat and settle into your festive season Anderson shelter before the political correctness bombs hit. Because it's time for the war on Christmas. Oh, I won.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
In most Western countries, the winter season plays host to many religious and cultural traditions. Some people say the phrase Happy Holidays exists as a way of trying to be more inclusive to other people's traditions in the modern era, but this is inaccurate. I did literally 5 minutes of Googling and found Happy Holidays being used as far back as 1863. And who knows how far back further it would have turned out to have gone if I'd done any more research. It turns out that people like to have more than one phrase to say. It's why people put season's greetings on stuff.
Season's
This isn't
greetings.
blasphemy, it's language. Did you know we've been writing Xmas instead of Christmas for thousands of years? The X isn't trying to secularize the religion by removing the word Christ or something. It's actually the Greek letter chi, which has been a Christogram, an abbreviation of Jesus Christ, for about 1700 years or something. I don't know, I'm not a religion studier. An extremely popular song from
He's just got a very
theologian,
fluff,
that was the
puffy
word.
head.
A very popular song from as far back as 1942 was Happy Holiday. You might know this song, or at least one of its 65 million covers. It was originally sung by Bing Crosby, who was, by all accounts, a pretty devoted Catholic. Bing was one of the faces of Christmas for decades. His Christmas radio broadcasts were hugely popular. That song was the opening and closing theme of his Christmas Sing with Bing program, which aired every Christmas Eve for almost 10 years. So sure, Happy Holidays is a useful catch-all term, since there are a lot of holidays going on, makes sense to use it in some contexts, but saying it isn't actually a new phenomenon. It's been a normal thing for Christians to say to each other for many years. And that piece of knowledge is one of the finest gifts I can bring.
Knowledge is a gift.
Peace on earth.
Oh,
These
have
are
fun
all
playing.
indisputable
Bye-bye
and
for
quite
now.
interesting historical facts. But not everyone puts the truth on their Christmas list. Some people want to open their stockings and find an explanation for why they're angry all the time. The big originator of the War on Christmas theory is Bill O'Reilly. I couldn't find footage of Bill's original War on Christmas segment, but handily the script Bill reads from in these segments was posted as an article on Fox's website. The segment was titled Christmas Under Siege, in which he made exaggerated claims about how various holiday parades were doing away with Christmas floats, New York has a holiday tree instead of a Christmas tree, and how Macy's stopped greeting people with Merry Christmas. They said a different thing. O'Reilly then went on to fantasize that this was part of a plot to diminish people's faith in religion, saying that quote-unquote secular progressives wanted to destroy religious oppositions to their policies, such as gay marriage, abortion, and drug legalization. And to bring about this horrible nightmare future, it was important to destroy religion in the public arena. Thus, Christian displays like Christmas must be scaled back, because the connection with Judeo-Christian beliefs is bad for the secular agenda. Ah, yes, the famously Judeo-Christian belief in Christmas. The secular movement has influence in the media, among some judges and politicians. Americans will lose their country if they don't begin to take action. Any assault on Judeo-Christian philosophy should be fought. Organizations like ThomasMore.org and the Alliance Defense Fund in Phoenix are fighting back, but need your help. The USA cannot defeat terrorism and any other evil without a strong, traditional foundation that clearly defines right from wrong. The struggle today is not about Christmas, but about the spirit of our country.
I don't know, what kind of bird do you think this is?
Bill is writing about how Macy's say a different thing now. It's basically the conservative version of slam poetry. Take something that technically has happened and then contort it until it's an attack on the very soul of our society and we need to defend ourselves. And that's why we need your attention and the money we'll get from our sponsors for getting eyes on their peppermint-flavoured Play-Doh or ribbed for her pleasure coffee machines. Bill's early rhetoric forms the basis for all the madness to come. It's always stores not saying Christmas as much, stuff like that. Holiday wish list? Oh no, God is dead and
God is dead and we have killed him.
The other side outnumbers them. I mean, Christian, Judeo-Christian people who believe in that philosophy outnumber.
This video is great because it just points out how utterly ridiculous this whole theory is. Like, it's just nonsense. It really is nonsense. It's a penguin. It's a newt penguin. Probably. I don't know, should that line go down a little further? How's our ratios? It's not quite as round. Maybe I make his butt bigger.
The secularists, maybe 6 to 7 to 1.
Oh, my religion has more subscribers than yours. By the end of his tenure, Bill was straight up just saying the names of companies which were trying to slit the throat of Christmas.
Barnes & Noble.
Barnes & Noble. Best Buy. Foot Locker.
The Gap.
The Gap.
The Limited.
The Limited.
Shopping on Amazon.
This year's list was
Shopping
handily
on
provided to
Amazon.
Bill by the American Family Association. The AFA website is a series of articles about how only the left does violence because they've never heard of mass shooting statistics. LGBT people are the real bullies because, a woman refused to accept her children were trans and they stopped wanting to talk to her. Hallmark and Chick-fil-A are the devil now because they showed a lesbian wedding in a commercial or something. And how VeggieTales is back. Oh, and also tons of War on Christmas bullshit, verbatim stealing Bill's old shtick. 3 guys you've never heard of discuss the secular push to scrub away the root word of Christ in Christmas.
There was a war on Christmas we were noticing.
Some people may say, well, that's not really a big deal, is it? Well, we thought it was part of the secularist push to scrub all references to Christianity from our culture.
Yeah, we've heard all this before. The secularists want to destroy Christianity, and they're doing it by rewording a few things at Christmas. But the AFA, unlike Fox, don't have advertisers. They survive through donations and selling things on their website. And you bet they've got a way of capitalizing on the war on Christmas. They want you to buy a button that reminds people that Jesus Christ exists.
Well, it is the Christmas season, and we've got these buttons that we are offering.
Honestly, how can people know you're a real member of the Jesus fan club if you aren't repping his holy merch?
You can get your 10-pack of these buttons for $15, and just go to afa.net.
What's a 10-pack of the buttons?
This
Jesus
is AFA
Christ.
Store. AFAstore.net, AFAstore.net.
Which brings us to the AFA's yearly naughty or nice list. One of the most deludedly self-righteous lists I've ever read. And I've read my top 10 games of the decade list. Both versions of Dark Souls 2 are on there out of spite. Fuck you. We are not friends. Click on any naughty company name for details and contact information. They want you to send emails to some guy who works at Office Depot to try to get them to write Christmas on things more. If a company has items associated with Christmas, but did not use the word Christmas, then the company is considered as censoring Christmas. That's the rubric. If you sell me a cracker at Christmas, but you don't call it a Christmas cracker, you're a secularist terrorist who's trying to stab the Christmas family. For many years, Bill, with the help of the AFA, was the reigning champion of the fight to save Christmas. He was the only man standing up to defend Christian values, which are the reason he knows right from wrong so well. But then in 2017, he got fired for allegedly sexually harassing at least 6 of his female co-workers. So Bill wasn't exactly a great follower of his religious teachings, was he? It's very clear why the war on Christmas argument is so attention-grabbing. It's telling people that their religion is under attack and we need those traditional values or our country will fall to terrorism or other evil. People will pay attention to your show when you say things like that, which leads to increased viewership and higher value of your advertising spots. You might even get people to buy a button or get some wealthy cretins to donate comical amounts of money to you. However, I don't think this alone gets to the true core of why this belief survives so well in the minds of more extreme conservatives. So we're going to have to go deeper. And then it says in brackets, Inception horn noise. I wasn't supposed to read that. Maybe to understand this line of thinking further, we need to go in search of even more ridiculously false and silly versions and see how it functions there.
First, I want to start off with central theme, which is the war on Christmas.
Oh, hi, Paul. In this classic video from 2017, which is a yearly rewatch for me, it's just a hilarious shambles in so many ways. Paul Joseph Watson spends 15 minutes of what's left of his life, and you only get one life. This is it. Complaining that there's a Tesco commercial with too much diversity in it.
They called it a Christmas ad, or at least it was supposed to be that. Didn't have any symbols of Christianity in the ad whatsoever. It did have a gay couple, hijabi Muslims, all this other guff. No actual Christian symbol, because of course we can't have that anymore, can we? At least like put a vicar in it or something. Cross. Anything Christian. It's a Christmas ad, for God's sake.
Alright, fine, Paul.
So
I'll see what
silly.
I can do. Approved for broadcast.
Oh no, my glasses are burning!
Wait, Paul also stipulated that a religious figure would suffice. Okay, how about this? Hey guys, that was the College of Cardinals on the phone. I've just been elected Pope. There, is that religious
I'll hit the first female
If that's not
Pope!
good enough, I bet I can undo some more catechisms. But hang on a second. It's easy to make fun of Paul, he's made sure of that, but let's seriously look at the idea there is some kind of manipulation happening with the lack of Christian iconography in this commercial. Because this begs a deeper question, which is, should Christmas commercials prominently display Christian stuff like crosses and priests? Because I haven't seen a convincing argument that the answer to that question is yes. Because even in commercials long before the supposed war on Christmas, you can still see a seemingly deliberate choice not to explicitly invoke Christianity, even when the intended audience would be mostly Christian. Because it turns out Christians have been having this exact discussion for a long time now, even before anyone knew what political correctness was. Historically, plenty of Christians have found that their religion being tied to a product being sold to them is kind of crass and disgusting. There's a Fox and Friends segment from a few years ago that highlights this discrepancy in an amazing way. They had a real Catholic priest on to discuss the war on Christmas, but despite how hard they tried to push him, he wasn't annoyed that things weren't Christian enough.
You'd be fine if it said Merry Christmas, but it doesn't. It says Happy Holidays, or things are simply red or green.
Well, it's not so much that bothers me. It's more the consumerism and the pressure to just shop.
He was much more concerned with how consumerism had eroded the religious meaning of the holiday.
It's like a little
it's more
round
the consumerism, I think,
button.
that's a problem for me.
All right, so let's take a look at some of the stores that have taken Christmas out of their mottos. J. Crew.
You can see the Fox people had really planned for a very different kind of interview. They'd prepared a graphic all about the mottos that didn't say Christmas anymore, but not everyone is interested in fabricating a culture war for attention. Some people actually want to think about things.
I guess it bothers me that they're using sort of overtly Christian tropes and themes like believe and marry and things like that that are associated with Christmas, but they're using it to just market goods. Now, I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just a way to appeal to as many people as possible, but it really kind of denudes the holiday of any sort of religious import.
And it seems that for many devout Christians, the concern isn't that commercials aren't Christian enough, it's the exact opposite. That commercials are leaning a bit too heavily on Christian ideas and themes in order to sell products. But the Catholic Church is notoriously full of commie scumbags. It just hasn't been the same since the Byzantine papacy. You don't have to get it, don't worry. Sometimes you write jokes just for you. Now, I'm not a fancy big-time Christian boy, but maybe commercializing the religious aspect of Christmas in order to sell people things is bad, and the more generic holiday themes in stores and commercials is a good way of respecting Christians' religious traditions. And it's been that way since long before 2017. Paul's whole narrative here is based on the assumption that commercials loved to invoke Christianity until Twitter invented social justice. But as we've seen, this assumption is objectively false. And inventing an imaginary past that's been stolen to justify present foolishness is a real Rachel move. Regina Phalange. Facts and data are inconvenient for Paul, so he doesn't like to bring them up. But I saw something interesting that I thought was relevant, so I'm going to talk about it while I have the chance. There's a great paper by the National Centre for Social Research, which has been gathering data about how people approach their religion for about 35 years now, and what they discovered is quite interesting. In the last 30 years, less and less people identify as Christian, at least according to the most accurate data. This corresponds with an increase in people identifying specifically as unreligious or atheist. Since the 2010s, there's been decisively more non-religious people in Britain than Christians even. Most of these people probably still celebrate Christian traditions. They're a common part of English culture. I'm an atheist and I still celebrate Christmas. But all these folks probably aren't putting crosses anywhere in their houses. And really, who's to say that that's what Christians do? Not everyone thinks that celebrating their faith requires putting a cross in their house. People's relationships with their religion aren't that simple. There's no Christmas handbook mandating you hang a cross up for the Yuletide. In fact, the actual Christian handbook seems to prioritize worshipping in private, unlike those darn pagans who love to babble on and on. What a weird thing to specify. I guess what I'm trying to say is,
yeah,
for most
he's
people,
gotta be.
this commercial is an accurate representation of how people behave at Christmas. It's just not about throwing crosses
And the
around,
little round
But while we're on the
cheeks.
topic of representation, I can't help but notice the specific
round and
lack
then
of
we put the thing on
lightsabers or
top.
delicious space milk anywhere in this commercial. Even though according to census data, almost 1% of Britons self-identify as Jedi. Probably not after this Christmas, though. No! Stop it! No! Paul's rant kind of goes on for a while. He doesn't really have a point he's getting to, so much as he's mad a commercial has Muslims in it for a few seconds. He's mad it's a Twitter moment and some people are applauding the diversity. He's sure that a YouTube video being brigaded by his followers and getting a couple of thousand dislikes indicates actually it's very unpopular, and so on. You can even see in his face that he's struggling to really articulate a decent justification to be angry.
Of course, there was a backlash to the backlash, which basically peaked yesterday with Twitter. Twitter came out and said this was one of their featured stories in their...
Listen, there's nothing more cringe than caring too much about Twitter. If you care too much about Twitter, you are a cringe person.
Twitter
Just
moments, which of course is on the homepage when anybody
go
goes onto
touch
Twitter.
grass. People who are
Imagine
online too
this
much.
being your
Exhausting.
life. It's stuff like this that really gives context to tweets where he's mad at black
Do some
celebrities
fiber art
talking
crafts.
about racism, calling them
Instead of being on the
sanctimonious
internet.
crybabies. Saying Britain still has
I'm gonna
racism
do this.
is annoying.
I'm gonna do this when I'm not on stream. I just wanted to do it on stream today in particular. So I could show off. So we could learn together. Because I'm usually streaming today, but I got my stuff and I really wanted to do it. But I still do stuff not on stream. I don't know if that's the exact shape, but it's a decent
What's way
shape.
more
I don't hate
important
the
and
shape. I
pressing
don't
is
know.
the Tesco Christmas commercial. He's also very sure this stuff isn't Bill O'Reilly nonsense anymore. It used to be, but it's real now.
It's no longer some Bill O'Reilly meme when it's actually happening.
He keeps saying this over and over. It's like boomer dubstep.
Now, I remember 10, 15 years ago, this is something that Bill O'Reilly, these other neocons would constantly bring up. People would debunk it and say it's a false concern, it's being exaggerated. There's no war on Christmas. What are you talking about? This is crazy. Well, fast forward to 2017.
Twitter is going to stay Twitter.
That was crazy.
Until someone figures out how to un-CEO people.
The thing about InfoWars videos, which are
Because he just
recorded
keeps
live on
fucking
the
it up
actual
for
show,
himself.
the ones where Alex is also there and Paul's just calling
And eventually a board of directors will be like, "Hi, you're losing us millions of dollars. Goodbye." Like, it's Twitter's banned in Brazil now, which was a huge part of their user base because he was being a fucking baby about it, as he is about most things. So now they don't have any of the revenue from Brazil that they were getting. Congrats, dumbass. Not quite even. That one needs to be a little farther over.
is that Paul is fundamentally not a very good live speaker.
Yeah, well, eventually I hope someone figures out how to fire him.
Saying this because I disagree with his political views or to
He's
make fun of him.
tanking the company.
He's a poor public speaker. It's just not one of his skills.
It's clear,
and
everybody
that's
but
fine.
him.
Some people are just too self-conscious for it. That's why he writes his videos in advance and edits them with snappy cuts and always is yelling. It makes his work hold people's attention. But he just can't maintain that energy in a live setting. Worse, his clear anxieties about what he's doing start to come through when the spotlight's on him too long. Sometimes he workshops his tweets in the pub with his friends before he posts them. No, I'm serious. He shows the tweet on his phone to his friends and asks, "Is this okay? Should I post it?" Looking for some kind of approval with an anxious look on his face. And it's a tweet petulantly quoting Stormzy out of context in order to imply that he hates all white people. And his remaining real-life friends nod and go, "Yeah, sure, man. I don't get why it's a big deal to you, but I guess it's for your job, right?" And then one of them sends me a message about it later. But anyway, my point is, Paul isn't that great at this whole live entertainment thing, and there's a reason Alex Jones uses him as sporadically as he can on his shows. He's only got about 5 things to say, and he has to keep saying them over and over. So eventually Alex realizes he needs to jump in and starts interrupting him with points of his own.
It's a Christmas app, for God's sake. But here's the kicker, right?
It's like having a Christmas ad where you drag Santa Claus behind a car.
Yeah, there've been newspaper articles about it all week.
Well, Paul, this is cultural appropriation. This is what the left's all about, is overriding. Taking
Zoom in.
All the headlines were like, "Oh, you're so offended at seeing Muslims." It's like, no, I'm offended at the fact, or I'm perplexed at the fact there's no...
It'd be like if you had an ad saying, this holiday season, support Ramadan at your local halal store.
You like your job,
and then
Paul?
showed guys in Knights Templar uniforms at the Muslim store.
At the Muslim store.
The other big claim he's making in this War on Christmas bit also is to do with Tesco. Paul went to a Tesco's and noticed
Oh my
to
God,
his
no.
horror that not enough things said Christmas. So he whipped out his phone and took some pictures to complain about on Twitter later.
Gonna
There's a
cut
funny
this.
bit in this video where Alex says he should have documented it, not realizing Paul already had.
They've got these Christmas cards, Alex. They've renamed them. They're now called charity cards.
Paul, you got to go back in and get some footage of this.
Well, I've got the pictures and I tweeted them, but people said...
Well, I've got the
Just
pictures and I
incredibly poor
tweeted them.
communication going on at InfoWars. The tweets themselves are really something.
Was in Tesco earlier. Their entire...
I can't do his voice. Their entire Christmas shelf, cards, wrapping paper, confectionery, not a single mention of the word Christmas. Not a single one. Christmas cards are now called charity cards. Pathetic. Truly pathetic. Then he added Tesco. Yeah, this is Tesco speaking. I'm sorry, Paul. We'll put Christmas on the crack. And before all you pointy heads claim they're called charity cards because some proceeds go to charity, that's always been the case. But they were still called Christmas cards. It's not just the commercial. At Tesco has capitulated to politically correct douchebaggery. And then there's a picture of some crackers and they're just called crackers, you know, because that's their name. They're not even calling them
Christmas crackers anymore.
The war on Christmas used to be some far-right evangelical Bill O'Reilly. Jesus Christ, Paul, we get it. You don't have to say it that many times. Truly saddening. After all these years, Tesco have finally started the war on Christmas for real. There's no Christmas anywhere in Tesco anymore. Not a single one. However, eagle-eyed viewers, well, frankly, eyed viewers who take a look at the photograph for more than a nanosecond might start to notice things Paul somehow didn't notice when he was literally standing there looking at them. For example, if you zoom in on one of his own pictures, you can actually see Merry Christmas written on some of the crackers. Some people went into their local Tesco and found that Christmas was written everywhere. Some people pointed out that these charity cards were in a display marked Christmas cards, and still others looked at packs of these charity cards and found that some of them say Merry Christmas on them. Tesco also has Christmas all over its website, where it happens to refer to the charity cards as charity Christmas cards.
Yay.
The website also refers to crackers
And
as
warm.
Christmas crackers. Not a single one. These things were mentioned to Paul.
A single shot rang out. We all knew what would happen, but no one dared discuss it. Yeah, that's literally how they're acting. Like, that's happening? No, it's not.
Immediately in response to the tweets when he made them a few years ago, and good fun was had by all laughing at this sad middle-aged man taking pictures in Tesco to whine about. By far the funniest bit of this video is when they cut to a feed of Paul's tweet thread about the Tesco stuff, and when they're scrolling down they accidentally scroll to the tweet pointing out Christmas is literally on the packaging, and then whoever's doing the screen capture panics, zooms out and scrolls down one more, and it's the one pointing out Christmas is on the website, and they just have to awkwardly fade back to Paul saying it's not all made up, this is definitely real.
Now, look, I mean, this is not some kind of Bill O'Reilly meme from the early 2000s anymore. This is actually happening.
No, I get it, Paul. It's not just Bill O'Reilly anymore. You made that point already. Move on.
This is a deliberate Orwellian process.
Oh, it's Orwellian, is it?
Changing language for the purposes of some lame nod at political correctness.
Okay, some of you might be confused at this point, so let's just get this straight. The far left, who, as we all know, run Tesco, are trying to undermine culture because they're worried about sounding racist. So they're doing this by not letting stores put Christmas anywhere, except in the stores, the products in the stores, and on the website.
Yep. Conspiracy theories, so sad sometimes.
The Marxists are at it again.
I went into Tesco on Saturday, went to the Christmas section of the store. Not one mention of Christmas. They don't even mention the word Christmas.
Not a single one.
Of course they did. That's how you know it's the Christmas section. That's why every year I know exactly where the elves are. You can't hide from me. Now, there is one minor thing worth talking about here. One teensy tiny thing that Paul might not have thought about, which is that one of the reasons why Christmas isn't written on everything is because you already know it's for Christmas. All the Christmas stuff is only in stores in the Christmas season for you to buy for Christmas. They're neatly arranged in special red aisles so you know where to look for the Christmas stuff. Putting Christmas on every single thing is just pointless. This isn't even to do with political correctness. It's just basic store design. They don't feel the need to acknowledge Christmas on the label because Christmas is being acknowledged at every other point in this transaction. Oh no, the label of this wrapping paper doesn't say Christmas wrapping paper. Help, I'm being tricked into forgetting my religion exists. Oh, Christmas is written all over the fucking wrapping paper? Oh, well, I guess I'll celebrate Christmas again this year. God, the cultural Marxists had better get their act together if they're gonna win this war. Fuck! There. That's probably structurally stable, right? Now, one might say, it's not fair to go after an old InfoWars video. What if InfoWars have spontaneously become smart and rational now, and cleverly moved on from a topic that they got obliterated on when people looked at their own photos? Well, yeah, they did. They dropped the topic and decided to move on to doing real journalism. I'm kidding, they did another one this year. Alex Jones goes to the tech.
It's like, it's so obviously stupid, and yet these people are just somehow convinced that it's not. I don't understand how they're like, oh yeah, conspiracy theories, this makes total sense. And it's like, here's all the evidence to the contrary. And they're like, no. No, that's not real. I was like, come on, bro. Facts and logics? Anyone? Can I get any facts and logics?
It's a state capital to witness the city of Austin's Christmas tree and expose the anti-Christian agenda hidden in plain sight. The banner beneath the tree that reads Happy Holidays.
Merry Christmas, ladies and gentlemen. Merry Christmas. And it's about Jesus Christ. It's not about the big corporations and the Chi-Com atheists and the globalists.
I think the existence of videos like this really crystallizes what the war on Christmas is actually about. Bullshit artists like InfoWars have to play a very careful game to survive and make money. InfoWars can't make money as a news website because they don't actually do any journalism, so no one comes to them for that. And they can't easily sell advertisements on their website or videos because, for unknown reasons, barely anyone wants to be associated with them.
It starts out with don't use the N-word. Well, I don't use that, so okay. And then next it's, oh, don't say Merry Christmas, say Happy Holidays.
Yeah, those are the same thing. I never thought of it that way. Imagine a shoe company looking for somewhere to advertise and seeing one of these videos and it's Alex Jones going, remember when they tricked us into not saying the N-word anymore? Well, Happy Holidays is just like that. They're probably going to say no. But Alex Jones has this problem, which is that he really, really likes expensive watches.
Oh yeah, the watch thing.
On his show, and according to court records, he once bought 4 of them in a single day. The cheapest one I could find him wearing cost around $12,000. So obviously he needs a lot of money to live. And how's he going to do that? Why, he'd have to develop some kind of business model that revolves around exploiting gullible people. So their best bet is to target a very specific demographic. In this case, conservatives with a conspiratorial streak, validate them by telling them that they're right,
looks
and
like
then
a
going,
little heart.
hey, if you want to become even more powerful,
It's a
check
little
out
hard to see
our
against the
pills.
phone
Also,
block,
get
but-
all you need to completely stuff Christmas stockings this year with our Christmas Mega Pack.
So it starts with don't say Merry Christmas, and it ends with they create an orthodox centralized system as well that is going to be welded into the new fascist left West. And out of that marriage, you will have the communist socialist system of
just saying
Islam merged
buzzwords.
with that.
I mean,
He's
this
just
sentence
saying
doesn't make
buzzwords.
sense. It just doesn't. It's a list of keywords. But
You
just
see,
making
it's
fun
so
of how dumb this all is would be to ignore why he still does it and why it works. On topics like this, I find myself constantly coming back to a great paper by Cormac Hurley,
big
a
is that?
principal researcher at
That's
Microsoft,
kind of too
about
large.
Nigerian email scams and how they function. You know how the Nigerian email
Ah!
scams usually have very poor language usage and grammar, and even say they're from Nigeria, even though if you Google Nigeria, one of the first results is email scam, and that makes them an obvious scam to most people? This is actually part of how the scam works, because their targets are the sort of people who won't notice the writing problems, because they tend to be the sort of people who end up giving them money. If you're smart enough to not fall for that part, they don't want you wasting their time, and they've quite smartly selected you out of the process by writing poorly. Since gullibility is unobservable, the best strategy is to get those who possess this quality to self-identify. InfoWars is following a similar business practice. Alex Jones's objective is to make money to sustain his expensive lifestyle where he
eats
watches
Rolexes or something.
And to do that, he needs to target an audience
He's
who will
eating
be fooled
watches.
into buying his overpriced stuff. So by talking absolute nonsense, yes, Jones is turning away everyone with half a brain, but people with half a brain generally are quite hard to sell the world's most expensive protein bars, Ultimate Fish Oil, and, Ultra 12. Jones is deliberately laser targeting the kind of people who would hear a phrase like, the communist...
That's the thing about Jones that was pointed out by H. Baum and people similar to him, is that it's just a racket. Like, most of these pickup artists, these, like, right-wing conspiracy theorists, all of them are just... They're trying to make money. And they do it in different ways, but they're all just trying to make money. Like, that's one of the things that pickup artists do, is that they all sell books that they've plagiarized from each other. And so there's a million books about, like, how to bang or whatever the fuck. And they are all the same. And they're just, you find the particular one, and they just want you to buy their shit. They don't want you to get in a relationship, because then you might stop giving them money. Sort of similar to dating apps, where it's like, they're not always incentivized to build lasting relationships. They claim that's their incentive, but if you keep coming back to the dating app, that's the actual goal, because that's how they make their money. So you gotta be careful. You gotta be careful.
socialist system of Islam and think, wow, that's bad, that's really bad, that's 3 bad things I hate. How do I stop that thing that must be happening because the man with the nice watch said it was? Which leaves them open to being sold the idea that keeping InfoWars afloat by buying their stuff is basically the same as showing you're a hero fighting back against these very real problems. And for the people who fall for it, it is a real ego boost, which creates a loyal fan base full of repeat customers. Nobody finds these videos convincing, but the people they're for find them reassuring. What you call weird conspiracy theorists who need validation, some people call a marketable demographic. But to keep this machine going, Jones has to find increasingly outlandish things to say to hold these people's attention and come up with reasons to keep supporting him and fighting the info war. And that means getting more and more ridiculous as the infinite eternal threat only gets even more infinitely threatening. Not only does this dance get increasingly difficult, they've also discovered that you can't just say lies about people, it turns out. If they say ridiculous bullshit about real people, they risk being sued for libel or defamation, as is the case with the Sandy Hook parents, who are in the process of fucking destroying Jones in court for telling his sizable audience that the parents of murdered children are all just paid actors and it was a fake shooting. So the war on Christmas is a real boon for Jones, because he can just go hog wild about whatever comes into his head, just make up whatever, and occasionally cut to footage of a tree being pushed over or some random act of vandalism and explain how they're all connected by a web of destruction by the secret Muslim communist anti-family coalition, and it's so incomprehensible it can't even be considered defamation of anyone. This is the kind of nonsense safe zone InfoWars has to live in to avoid destroying itself by getting owned in court, which is why, for legal reasons, I'm required to mention that story I told earlier about Paul Joseph Watson is not true. I made it up. Those DMs are fake. I thought it would be a funny joke to show how shitty it is to make things up about people. However, even though I made it up, it definitely did. The war on Christmas is a safe bet for Jones to cover, since there's no obvious, tangible negative effect on real people, except his audience, whose minds he is completely ruining, but that's their choice. As what some French people might call a connoisseur of InfoWars garbage, so I guess it's me whose life they're ruining, this is my favourite kind of the schlock they do, where Alex just grabs a cameraman and goes out in public and just makes a bunch of noise and runs around annoying people and getting to arguments with whoever he can get his soy-stained hands on. Soy-stained hands. Trying to cite data opens him up to being punked and accidentally offers statistics that can be easily rebuked with simple explanations, and then they have to leave it in because that's the best footage they got that night.
There is a war on Christmas. There is a war on Christianity. Did you know that more than half of all religious persecution in the world is against Christians?
I believe it. I mean, we're one of the largest groups.
No.
So statistically, if there's attack on religion, there's going to be a lot of attack on Christians.
Somebody won't tell me to be.
Politely shakes his hand and leaves. Jones starts losing it, just screaming Merry Christmas into the void, talking about how free he is from control.
Sad.
Merry Christmas!
Like, that's the other thing is that some of these videos have pointed out is, like, ultimately I kind of feel sympathy for most of these guys, because it's sad and scary to live in a world where everyone is against you, you know? Like, wow, that must be a pretty spooky thing to picture, that everybody in the world hates you. Wow, I wouldn't want to live like that. And, like, especially with, like, the pickup artist side of things, which this video isn't getting into as much, but, like, it's just this belief that, like, there's no such thing as human connection. There's no such thing as friendship between men and women, and that's so sad. That's so limiting. I love my little brother. He's not the same gender as me. We're not trying to fuck each other. We can just be friends. Did you know that? I know many men who are even not related to me at work. I'm not gonna fuck them. They're not gonna fuck me. It's fine. We can still be friends. Like, the end-all be-all of, like, romance and sex is, like, the only relationship you can have gives you such a narrow world and gives you such a sad point of view, I think. Because I think there's so much more to life than that. And to just reduce every relationship you have to, like, if I'm not fucking, it's not worth it. That's so sad. There's so much more you could have. There's so many lovely relationships that you're missing out on because you're not allowing yourself to have them because you just got this warped view of what relationships can be. What's the other color? Oh, it mixed the wools. What are the other colors I have? This doesn't have any green on it. We can steal some green. I got this little frog. This little froggy. I'm gonna steal some green from him for this project. Just a tiny bit. Just a tiny bit of green. For a little paint palette. Just a little baby amount. Just a tiny bit. Yeah, it's just...
We're not surrendering.
Such a sad world building.
America and the world is awake. Freedom is rising. And Merry Christmas from Infowars.com.
But then he remembers that the point of all this is to push his products, so then there's another few minutes where he calms down and talks about the great deals you can get at InfoWarsStore.com.
There's a war on Christmas. There's a war on America. There's a war on our free speech. There's a war on the
can maybe
family's
fit one more
very
on there.
existence. And those very same forces that have it out for Christianity have it out for InfoWars and have it out for you and your family. But we need you to go to InfoWarsStore.com this Christmas. We need you to fund InfoWars by getting great products you need. We've got huge sales going right now.
And this completes the selection
Try and
process.
make a purple.
After spending 15 minutes literally just running around and screaming at people, anyone still watching is probably a prime target for his advertising. So you get 3 whole minutes of him explaining to you how cheap the deals are. Everything's still more expensive than the equivalent you can find at like any other store. But that's not the point. The point is you're supporting the info war. You're saving the world with free speech.
Just trying to mix them together to make a purple.
Fight bad men. I'm so glad I can fight back against control and be free by purchasing iodine. So we find here that the war on Christmas is a decent way of getting very gullible people to pay attention long enough that you can direct sell them diet supplements. And we've seen how, for people whose business model involves straying close to legal action, something ridiculous and silly like the war on Christmas is kinda a gimme. You can accuse the Bad People Coalition of secret Christmas crimes, and you're safe, because imaginary people you made up can't sue you. However, we still haven't fully discovered why the war on Christmas specifically has such a strong appeal to the kinds of sad people who make up InfoWars' customer base.
Oh, this one is red. We'll use some red. We'll steal some red.
In believing Christmas is under attack in the first place.
They're making a beautiful paint palette.
I got bored and decided to invent a new recipe for eggnog. Well, there you have it. The war on Christmas is over. And I guess Christmas won because it turned out that there never was a war on it. Oh well. I think eggs go bad pretty quick, don't they? Oh, my tummy and brain.
My tummy and brain.
I microwaved this earlier to warm it up, and now there's definitely bits of paint loose in it. Thanks, Neil. Oh, I think I'm crossfaded on paint fumes and alcohol. Oh no, it's happening. I've lost enough IQ points that I think IQ is real. And that means I'm fucked up enough to watch a PragerU video. PragerU is a YouTube channel funded by oil and fracking barons and other related think tanks which likes to masquerade as a university. Honestly, you don't even need to look up the topics they cover. If you find a list of their major donors, you can pretty easily guess the entirety of their video output. They make 5-minute long videos which feature next to no research or evidence, but they have a lot of money to spend on infographics and getting special guests to read their scripts. And that's basically the same thing as being true. This one on the war on Christmas is called Just Say Merry Christmas. This is the usual stuff we've seen before, but presented in a new way. I mean, literally, it's just a repurposed Bill O'Reilly script, complete with an aside about how it's the secularists' fault.
The opponents of Merry Christmas and other uses of the word Christmas know exactly what they're doing.
The opponents of Christmas? What the fuck?
They're disingenuous when they dismiss defenders of Merry Christmas as fabricating some, quote, war on Christmas. Of course it's a war on Christmas.
It's a fucking gun.
Or more precisely, a war on the religious
I don't
nature
know.
of America.
I don't think it's like... I think fear can, like, in the moment sort of lower intelligence. I think over a long period of time that doesn't apply as much, though. Like, as every horror movie is, you see people making dumb decisions because they're freaking out and they're scared. And that's every, like, video inside a haunted house is people doing dumb shit because they're, like, not thinking straight. Like, they're only... If you're in, like, a immediate anxiety-causing situation, then yeah, you might be like, I'm gonna run upstairs instead of out the front door because my brain is just solely focused on, like, get away from this scary monster or whatever. And that's the only focus. And I think that's where the stupidity kind of comes in just like a moment-to-moment basis. But I think over time it doesn't affect as much.
First watched this video, this image kept coming back to me of a person who says happy holidays and laughs at people who think the war on Christmas is real, morphing into an enemy combatant. Why was this imagery necessary? Why take people laughing at you for believing a made-up thing, accuse them of knowing exactly what they're doing, and then reveal them to be trying to destroy America's nature? And then I realized that this is the actual core of the whole thing. This image actually explains more about the conservative ideology than anything else we've covered here. You see, Dennis Prager and ideologues like him have for quite a while been encountering this one small problem, which is that their ideas are wrong. This is why, if you watch any of PragerU's other videos, they're full of completely hysterical, imaginary graphs, most of which don't even label their axes. What even is this? And often they make outright false claims and tell clear lies. Sometimes they fabricate ridiculous quotes and put quotations around them, as if to say, look at this ridiculous thing people who disagree with you say, but the quote is something they made up. No one actually said this. They made it up and attributed it to some imaginary enemy to try to convince you that this is what people who aren't like you believe, so you must be right. This constant lying and misrepresentation of reality makes my point for me. To get you to believe what they believe, they have to lie, because the truth simply isn't enough to support these beliefs. The bulk of PragerU consists of strategies to get around the fact they don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to the truth. And this is where the war on Christmas and similar conspiracy theories comes in. Because when a belief system is on shaky ground when it comes to the truth, it needs something else to maintain it. Extra beliefs and fantasies to prop it all up. Otherwise, doubts and anxieties start to come in. What if I'm wrong? What if I've missed something? What if other people are laughing at me? What better way to put a stop to these feelings than to convince yourself your enemies are trying to destroy your culture, even your holidays? That they're even doing it on purpose and know they're doing it because they're the bad guys and you're the good guys. Instantly, all your doubts and fears that you've missed something, all critical thinking can be dismissed. Life stops being about reason or evidence and starts being about the war to protect your ways from the bad ways. Right and wrong don't matter anymore. They are conspiring to destroy you. When you don't say Merry Christmas, you're stealing my holiday from me. They even have a little animation where a kid beats up Santa Claus. This is how persecuted the far right need to convince themselves they are to escape from the much simpler conclusion that some of the things they believe aren't true. Everyone has to be out to get them. Even by saying happy holidays, you're kicking the shit out of their dreams. Imagine something you enjoy, something you love. The bad guys hate it. They'll call it racist and patriarchal and try to destroy it. You're smart. You think good things. Their ideas are weird and strange. It's okay. It's okay. You can go back to sleep. You don't have to think too hard about the fine details of your beliefs if you also think people are out to get you for believing them. You don't have to think about why the evidence or data contradicts you. The bad guys are out to destroy your culture, so they probably made it all up.
We're so busy in America trying to promote tolerance, but this tolerance is tolerating everything except Christianity. They look at Christians as narrow-minded bigots. But the opposite is actually true. Christianity is being bigoted against. We're under attack.
If you're against my intolerance of others, you're attacking me. Conservative Christians must be the real victims of bigotry in the world. I'm not wrong. There's
tiny
just a war
paintbrush.
How convenient.
And it's once again the person of the Lord Jesus Christ that is under attack. Amen. But the Bible says no weapon formed against us shall be able to prosper. So we're going to be all right.
Tell that to Constantinople, baby! Prager ends his video by summing up his victim complex for me.
By not wishing me a Merry Christmas, you are not being inclusive. You are excluding me from one of my nation's national holidays. So please, say Merry Christmas.
Okay, and then they gave him a
and
little
Christmas party and Christmas vacation. If you don't, you're not inclusive. You're hurtful.
Private military contractors, on the other hand, are fine! What the fuck? Ah, what a delightfully unbiased video. No political agenda here. This course was made possible by a generous donation from Reagan.com. A great example of how this imaginary sense of victimhood excuses flaws in the rest of the belief system is present in this video. Prager briefly sums up what he calls the inclusiveness argument. Let's see how he summarizes it.
That Merry Christmas or Christmas party or Christmas vacation is not inclusive.
Now, what he's saying kind of makes sense here, doesn't it? If there's going to be an event during the holiday season that's traditionally called a Christmas party, but some people who don't celebrate Christmas might also be invited to it, some people might argue that calling it a holiday party is a more appropriate name than a Christmas party. Now, personally, I don't think it really matters what...
Also, here's the other thing about Happy Holidays, is Christmas and New Year's are like a week apart, usually less than. Happy Holidays. Happy Christmas and New Year's. Most Christians are also celebrating New Year's. Most people who follow the Gregorian calendar are also celebrating New Year's. So, like, your argument's dumb.
Call a party, and I also don't really think many non-Christians will decide not to go to an event simply because it's called a Christmas event. But I do see the overall point of the inclusiveness argument. It is maybe a little more appropriate a name for a gathering of people, and I don't really think there's anything wrong with naming something like that in the hopes it makes some people feel more recognized and included. It's just not a big deal. The argument seems fairly decent to me. So, what is Dennis's rebuttal to this argument? Well, his problem is he doesn't really have one. He simply asks who is really being excluded and uses this to segue into an actually unrelated final point, which we'll get to later. But his actual rebuttal is provided in how he presents this argument, which is that this entire argument is just a trick you shouldn't listen to at all. Let's look at how he sets up the inclusiveness argument in the video.
Activists on the left will eventually seek to remove Christmas as a national holiday. Now, the left doesn't announce that its agenda is to thoroughly secularize American and European societies. Instead, they offer the inclusiveness argument.
The leftist secularists, an all-powerful cult, are trying to change the nature of America, but they can't just walk around all day saying, I'm evil and want to destroy Christmas, so they came up with this argument instead, but it's not their real reason, so you should ignore it. The argument might sound reasonable, but you shouldn't think about it, because they're bad and have an evil agenda. This masks the actual truth, which is that the inclusiveness argument is actually fairly cogent. Dennis can't give a rebuttal to that, because it's a really simple, small point that just makes sense. But admitting that means conceding that sometimes it's nice to make people feel included, which destroys the entire war on Christmas argument. So instead, he reframes the argument as a fake trick by a group of people who want to remove religion from society.
I got really carried away. I'm sorry, I don't know what to put here.
We're only pretending to want people to feel included. And this is how persecution complexes function in making people retain their ideas. If you make a decent enough argument that they can't give a rebuttal to, they can just fantasize about how it's a trick.
This inclusive argument plays on Americans' highly developed sense of decency.
This is really misspelled. T-E-M-E, to me, Uello will fold it into the shane of a leaf fell on the top of the head. Uh-oh.
Trying to play on your
God is just like Zeus.
As opposed to
Christian
expecting
God
you
just
to do
like
a really
Zeus.
basic, decent thing. It's all part of the secret secularist plot by the secularists to bring about their state religion, secularism.
Most people do not realize that the left believes in secularism as fervently as religious Jews and Christians
Do they really?
believe in the Bible.
Where's your evidence?
I'm sorry, what?
Hey, there he is!
That doesn't make any fucking sense, Dennis! What does that mean? Who the fuck do secularists pray to? Fucking Aquaman!
Fucking Aquaman!
I did the thing again. Do you remember it? Do you remember?
Oh boy.
So, there we have it. I think we figured out the purpose of the war on Christmas. Sometimes it's to grab people's attention, either to sell advertising space, or to directly sell supplements.
I mean, I just assume it's machine translating.
But on a deeper level, it's a fantasy
There's no real
victimhood
translator,
that
it's
helps
just
to
done by
support an
machine, which is
underlying
wrong.
belief system that doesn't have facts to support it otherwise.
Luckily, you just look at the pictures and kind of figure it out, but... you know, whatever.
You're not wrong.
Punching
They're
Santa in the
just
face.
out to get you. Who's they? It's whoever you want it to be. Oh, and here's one last quick incidental thing that happens to tie all of this together. Prager's old War on Christmas video fills time by talking about how a Jewish person wrote White Christmas.
That's why it's not surprising that it was an American Jew, Irving Berlin, who wrote White Christmas, one of America's most popular Christmas songs. In fact, according to a Jewish musician writing in the New York Times, almost all the most popular Christmas songs were written by Jews. Apparently, all these American Jews felt quite included by Christmas.
So, there we go. Non-Christians will never feel excluded by Christmas because 70 years ago a Jewish person wrote a song with Christmas in it. Dennis thinks this is a great point. And you can tell he thinks it's great because he wrote it into the script for this year's video about Christmas as well.
And in perfect melting pot fashion, Irving Berlin, the son of a rabbi, wrote the definitive Yuletide song, White Christmas.
Ah, it's such a clever point, you might as well use it twice. Unfortunately for Dennis, Irving Berlin didn't just write exactly one song about Christmas, then disappear into the void. He actually lived on and wrote a few songs that might even be a bit inconvenient for Dennis's argument. He also composed a little ditty called Happy Holiday. That's right, the same guy behind White Christmas also wrote the other incredibly iconic Christmas song, the one that opened and closed Bing Crosby's Big Christmas show for many years. Apparently, Irving Berlin wrote Happy Holidays into his lyrics because that's a completely normal thing to say, and the use of the phrase has nothing to do with political correctness. Incidentally, White Christmas was composed for a film called Holiday Inn, which also has Happy Holiday on the soundtrack. This fact isn't particularly meaningful here, but I thought it was funny. Dennis Prager obviously knows all this. If he knows about Irving Berlin, he surely knows his other popular songs and their titles. He's not stupid. He knows it's normal to say Happy Holidays at Christmas. It's impossible to miss this fact, even if you do basic research. Hell, even one of the articles he cites in the video mentions that White Christmas was written for Holiday Inn, but for his videos, he performatively pretends these facts don't exist, because PragerU is a fake university designed to sell a broken belief system so its donors can continue to profit from the status quo. And at the end of the day, isn't that what Christmas is all about? No. Well, it shouldn't be, but it is. Wow, with motion graphics, you can strawman people easily. Great idea, Dennis. But what are you going to do if other people start doing it to you? Oh, his mouth fell off. Merry Christmas, everyone. See,
and then we
I can say
have
it, and I'm king of the male
little
feminists,
feeties and a little
so
tail.
clearly there's no problem here. Other people do have holidays around now, though, so happy holidays might be more appropriate in some circumstances. Anyway, if you're angry and you need a reason to be angry to do with Christmas, go to therapy. Just go to therapy.
Just
if you're
go
angry
to therapy.
and you think it's because lesbians are in a Christmas thing, you're not actually angry because people are corrupting Christmas or infecting your traditions and culture. You're not even angry
Give
because
him
of
some
political
little
correctness or
fifties.
leftism. You're angry because you feel expected to be, because you've built a cage for your mind. And the solution to that is to change things about yourself. Sorry, there isn't anything wrong that needs to be fixed with the world. That's you.
I wouldn't be so sure, Harris.
Fortnite Tower Recon Specialist, you're alive!
Yes, thanks to the magic of Christmas, I'm real now. And I'm going to take you on an adventure of discovery until you convert to whatever Kirk Cameron thinks is Christianity. You know, like in reactionary Christian movies.
What is this, a nostalgia critic video? We're not doing that. We're not parodying a whole movie genre now. This is the end of the video. We're done.
But movie parodies are automatically funny if you know what they're referencing. So it's easy content. And you make videos slowly enough already. This way, half the script writes itself.
Yeah, for the first few minutes maybe, but I can't sustain a whole... You know, I'm sick of this bit too. We're done. That's the end.
You can't just end a video because you gave up on your own storyline.
Happy Wintermas, everybody!
Christmas.
Little feeties.
We did it. We technically got a seasonal video out on time. Join me in October 2022 for the release of this year's Halloween video. But seriously, it's Christmas, time for some classic Christmas honesty. Thanks a lot to everyone who supports me doing this stuff. Thanks so much to my patrons, whose names should be somewhere around here right now, for funding this ridiculous thing that I do with my life. My patrons have been able to see this video almost a year in advance. I put it out when I finished it after Christmas, so I figured they could see what I was doing. Patrons normally get to see videos early, but usually like a few days in advance, not normally that long. Oh, and the names go in the credits like this. I also do bonus videos,
140?
behind the scenes type stuff. I did a really high effort
Deserved.
video about the graph.
Do you
that
see
I
how
made
high effort?
for this video, which is probably the best video I ever made, and barely anyone's going to see it. So
Where
that's
was-
nice. It's been.
I think that was the origin of the wallpaper gag. Oh, poor Mortimer.
Oh, you like your peanut butter, don't you, Mortimer? Oh, he's a good boy. Oh. Hey friends, did you know that climate change is definitely real and definitely affected by human action? I had to ask because, well, some people deny that that's happening. And this video's about them. Now, I'm not here to pretend that there's a real debate in science about whether CO2 affects global temperatures or whether humans have a hand in it. The science is settled and the deniers are wrong.
Oh yeah, call them deniers to make them look bad. That's a
Gross's
classic
peanut butter.
straw man argument. They're not denying climate change, they're just skeptical that it's happening. See, it's actually very smart when you put it that way. And look how this degenerate refuses to engage in reasonable debate with people who disagree with him. That's not rational at all. How can the issue be settled if you haven't debunked your opponent's points?
Look, mate, I hate to be dogmatic, but I think any reasonable analysis of climate deniers has to contend with the extreme deficit of actual facts on the side of people who claim to be the ones who know the facts better than the actual researchers. When someone specifically positions themselves as pro-science and fetishizes the idea of reason, the fact they're being unreasonable is something that needs to be brought up. We're going to get into it, but if someone's evidence is so poor that even me, a gaming YouTuber, who got peanut butter in his ear when he was setting up the first shot for this video, can see the holes in it, then something's really gone wrong here. So in this video, we're going to look at some prominent climate deniers, what they have to say, why what they say is clearly wrong, why they seem to believe it anyway, how people get to be climate deniers, and what we can do to make there be less
of them.
Nailed it. I suppose one thing you could do is just let the ice sheets melt. I mean, the problem would kind of go away if most of them drowned. Oh, I'm dying. Oh, I guess I was wrong. Oops.
We're all gonna die!
Now, climate denialism doesn't come in just one flavour. No, like ogres, the issue has layers. And unlike ogres, climate deniers are not all-stars. Although the ice they skate is getting pretty thin, and the water's getting warm, so they might as well swim. Smash Mouth's All-Star was about climate change. Change my mind! It's range from claiming the climate isn't actually changing at all, to admitting that the climate changes but that humans don't have an effect and it's probably just normal that things have got so warm lately, I'm sure it'll go back to normal soon, to claiming that CO2 doesn't really have an effect on the climate, to saying that even if it does, it's actually good for us since plants need CO2, to saying it's real but it's not that bad and scientists are exaggerating, to saying, well, look, I'm confused. A lot of people are saying a lot of different things, so I guess it's still up for debate and we shouldn't do anything. Ah, that's great. See, even cowards have a place in denialism. If you haven't heard of Ben Shapiro, then your YouTube recommendations bar is glitched out. Shapiro is a conservative commentator who's very popular with people who already agree with him, and he's really good at winning debates with
Look at the
teenagers who haven't finished
fit.
university and don't have all the media training.
Look at the
he was editor at
fit.
large of Breitbart for 4 years.
I'm
and
so
he's
proud
written
of
10
him.
books
He's
about
so
how it's the
cute.
left's fault that conservatism keeps
He's
making things worse for
adorable.
everyone. He's a true intellectual
love
gymnast, the kind that can
him.
write
Oh, I didn't give
tweets
him
to
eyeballs.
crime
I
when
should
the
give him
left
his
talk about
eyeballs.
how they're on the right
Poor
side
man
of
can't see
history,
nothing.
And then publish an entire book called The Right Side of History. Here he is dipping his webbed
Put all
flippers
these
into
away.
the pool of climate change with his signature.
Yee,
Shapiro
details are
intellect.
fun.
So let's say.
Oh wait, I didn't give him a tail either. Fuck.
That all of the water levels around the world rise.
He needs a
by
tail.
5 feet over the next 100 years. Say 10 feet by the next 100 years, and it puts all the low-lying areas on the coast underwater, right? Which let's say all of that happens. You think that people aren't going to just sell their homes and move?
Here it is. Here's the origin. All busted origin. Like, my favorite people on YouTube are always people who just fucking commit to the bit. If you commit to the bit, then I'm into it. He's like, yeah, I'll fucking axe a hole in the wall. I don't give a shit. And that's why I'm like, this is a quality video. Give him a tail.
Just one small problem. Sell their houses to
Two!
men.
Fucking Aquaman! Pew! Who's gonna buy a house that's under the ocean, dumbass? Deeply silly.
It was watching this talk by Shapiro that got me wanting to look at and analyse climate denial in more detail. Because this absolute genius-brained idea that everyone affected by things like floods can just sell their homes to people who would love to buy a flooding house, apparently, and move somewhere else, well, it begs a lot of questions about how these people think. How have things reached a point where someone thinks they can get away with saying something this ridiculous in front of an audience of people? And how have things reached the point where some people in that audience won't recognise it for the obvious ignorant bullshit that it is? This led me down a particular hole of discovery. I realised that climate deniers aren't just wrong. They're obviously wrong. In very clear ways. And that makes the whole thing so much more interesting. How does this work if it's so paper thin? Take, for example, Stephen Crowder. Stephen Crowder is a conservative political commentator, and Wikipedia tells me he's a comedian, which I'm glad they mentioned or I wouldn't have noticed. Crowder's YouTube channel is his special place to wax lyrical about topical conservative issues. He's a rational thinker who doesn't play by anyone's rules and will follow truth wherever it leads. Although it always seems to lead to whatever he wanted to believe in the first place. I'm sure it's just a coincidence that he never has to change his mind about anything. Crowder has a big beef with Bill Nye, as we've seen in the past, but that's a byproduct of his more general climate denial.
If you give him 4 whole eyeballs, maybe we should make a spider with a bunch of eyes. Wait, you would hate that, never mind.
As a climate realist who acknowledges that the climate has changed and is changing, it's just not changing in the way that all the scientists say it does. In other words, he's denying the science, but in denial about denying the science. His most popular video on the topic has almost 2 million views and claims to debunk the top 5 climate change myths. We'll get to his others later. Regarding this one first, however, he's wrong. This video and everything in it has been debunked repeatedly and epically by many people online on the internet already, so I'm not going to really do
I hope so. I don't know.
You've noticed
this is a bit of an old
There's
video.
No avoiding it. When I was hitting the wall with the axe, I got a little bit of debris on my mouth, and I didn't notice it for a couple takes. Just try not to look at it and we'll all get through it together. What I want to draw attention to here is how blatantly wrong it is to anyone who's willing to do even a smidgen of research. One of the myths he tries
He's got little eyeballs. Oh, look at his cheeks.
Number 2, you've heard this one everywhere.
Oh, I feel proud of myself. Let's go.
If the ice sheets were melting, it would
Needle
cause an
felting is
increase in
great.
sea levels
New
as
favorite
all the
craft
water in
unlocked,
the ice
honestly,
makes its way into the
TBH.
oceans. It would also increase CO2 levels because CO2 is stored in ice.
Look how light he is. He's doing nothing at all.
The albedo of the planet, its ability to reflect the heat and light of the sun.
Oh, that looks shit on camera.
Make things worse on its
Oh,
own.
that kinda
It
looks
would
okay.
exacerbate the process by which things are getting worse. But don't worry, Stephen Crowder's done a picosecond of
I love
Googling,
him.
and he's decided that they're not melting. In fact, they're growing.
The Antarctic ice sheets are actually growing by billions of tons per year. Does that come to me from climate change denial /flatearthers.com? No, how about NASA? According to the new analysis of satellite data, the Antarctic ice sheet showed a net gain of 112 billion tons of ice
Alrighty.
per year from 1992 to 2001.
Oh shit, he's using facts and logic. Sound the
Skeleton.
alarms. Battle station.
That is just a skeleton.
According to the new analysis of satellite data, the Antarctic ice sheet showed a net gain of 112 billion tons of ice per year from 1992 to 2001.
Oh shit, he's using facts and logic.
He turns the skeleton to face the camera too.
Sound the
10 out of
alarms.
10.
Battle stations.
I'm
Prepare
like,
for
goodbye! He's throwing everything on the floor.
Question. When you said ice sheets, that's a plural sound.
Is there like a hook? Oh, I guess that's
Could it
what it's
be
supposed to
that
hook
there's
to. I was just
another
using it as a poker.
Ice sheet, say in Greenland, where
I don't know.
the opposite
I
is
don't really
true,
want them to be
it's melting
keychains, so I'll just keep
really
that.
quickly. And maybe there's a net loss.
I
of
have stuff.
ice. I wonder what he'll say if he doesn't bring it.
You could make them a keychain, but I don't wanna, so I won't. Can't make me.
Up. He doesn't just pretend Greenland doesn't exist. According to the European
Forget
Environmental
what was in this
Agency,
one.
between the years
Nothing.
of 2002 to 2011, Greenland lost an average of 215 billion tons of ice per year. Then
I'm
in
just gonna have a
2012,
big collection
it lost
of needles, I
500
guess.
billion. So if you do some quick maths
I'm not a
there,
violent
you'll probably
person.
notice that
I just have a
even
bunch
if
of
Antarctica
needles.
is growing at the rate Crowder says it is, which we'll get back to that later,
If I use it as a keychain, then it's gonna fall off my backpack and I'll cry forever. Like, if I put it on my keys, it's gonna get fucking torn up in my backpack. I'm gonna go bleh, and move, and then it's gonna get caught on something, and then he'll fall off the keychain and be lost forever. We have to be gentle with him. We can't put him on a keychain where the world at large can destroy and attack my boy. No! If I put it on the outside of my bag, he will perish! He will perish!
over 100
If he dies, I
billion
will be so
tons of
sad.
ice per year is now water in our oceans,
should we
which
make
appear
next?
to be rising for some inexplicable reason. Look, if you live in Venice, just sell your house to the Innsmouth people.
To the
and move
Innsmouth
away.
people?
It's fine. It's There's also the slightly deeper problem that Crowder's point about the Antarctic ice sheets isn't actually true either.
Could sit on
The
the
article
keyboard
that he
for now.
posts up links to a study in the Journal of Glaciology entitled Mass Gains of the Antarctic Ice Sheet Exceed Losses. Note that it says Antarctic ice sheet, because it's talking about the Antarctic ice sheet on its own, and not the one in Greenland, which is melting. The study was focused on a specific part of East Antarctica, which most climatologists agree is growing. The question has been how much, and whether this offsets the overall
he's a little
losses
strawberry
in West
bird.
Antarctica, which is melting, and whether
very blue for
Antarctica
some reason in the
overall is
pictures.
losing or gaining ice.
Look
Linked
at
in
the
description is a
mouth.
really interesting breakdown by Shannon Hall for Scientific
I
American.
make another egg.
No, Paul, not the blog section. An actual article exploring why other climatologists disagree with this particular study's findings. The study calculated the height of glaciers using methods which other scientists have argued is less
Do you have a
accurate
tail?
than other available
I don't know that
ones,
this one
which
has a tail. I
presents
think it's supposed to be a
danger of the
cheeky.
results having been
It's got a
thrown
little
off.
red bit
And
on its
furthermore,
head.
the study assumes that the height increase is all ice, whereas others
Yeah,
would
little cheeky
contend it is
chick.
largely or partly snowfall, which is a whole lot less water. Other studies using different techniques conclude a much smaller increase, which means the net change in ice in Antarctica would be a loss and not a gain in ice. In other words, Crowder found basically the one study that contends that the mass gain
Okay.
exceeds the losses elsewhere in Antarctica, not net in terms of all the ice sheets, just in Antarctica, and when, oh, that's it, that's the one proof. But tons of people disagree about this, and they have pretty good reasons to. I highly
Now
recommend
we
you read the article for
step.
yourself. Or, I mean, you could even read more than one thing before coming to a conclusion.
What?
I could spend
Reading
an hour
multiple
on this paper,
things.
and maybe one day I will. Let me know in the comments. But we're pressed for time, so I will point out that the main author of that paper is not just NASA.
How about NASA?
More than NASA work on things individual people with names do. The main author of the paper, Jays Wally, was interviewed in the Scientific American, and he had this to say. I'm actually going to read this in voiceover because I forgot to write it in my notes. When our paper came out, I was very careful to emphasize that this is in no way contradictory to the findings of the IPCC report or conclusions that climate change is a serious problem that we need to do something about. Even if, as Wally's
predicted
paper
me.
is
It
100%
does look like a chick.
accurate,
Yeah, I agree with you.
which many of his associates have reasonable reasons to say is not correct, but even if, we're still net losing far more ice through the other sheets, and the author of the paper believes that climate change is in fact happening, he just thinks it hasn't started happening in Antarctica yet. And that actually does make some sense. The last thing to start melting would be the coldest place in the world, right? I just realised that I don't know if it's actually the coldest place. Pretend I said one of the most coldest places. Oh, I'm gonna weasel my way out of all of my mistakes. Oh, I learned it from
I'm watching you!
Crowder's website
Yes, he
is
did.
just full of this shit.
Skeleman is
The
back
website
there.
is largely very short articles about how AOC is a demon, or healthcare is communism, or women's bodily autonomy is basically the Boxer Rebellion, usually ending in links to whatever video he did lately that's tangentially related to the subject. The articles themselves are authored by the site's editor, Courtney Kirchhoff. I hope it's not Kirchhoff. I could check how to pronounce her name you know, do basic research, but I feel in the spirit of things I should just not fucking bother. One particular article that interests me is this one from March this year. Climate change fail. Melting glacier is growing again. The article is the usual waffle about how everything's always changing and therefore climate change isn't a threat or something. But the point it's dancing around is that a glacier that has been melting in the past is currently growing. Then there's another couple paragraphs of needless editorializing about how this proves there's nothing wrong with the climate, claiming that the melting was caused by human action is wrong because it's not melting anymore, weird pontificating about big government wanting to control people's lives, and a gif from Zoolander. In other words, it's the most educated piece of conservative journalism I've seen all year. Hey, H-Bomber Guy here. Two things about this interest me. Firstly, just want to point out that there's no mention of Greenland in Crowder's website or in his videos at all.
Greenland does not exist.
Exact instant they think they can find a mention of it that proves what they think is happening. Secondly, even though they think they've finally found proof that things are better in Greenland, it's still just thinly disguised bullshit. The problem is the impression that Crowder and his website want to give. Here's a graph of the mass of Greenland's ice sheets from late 2016 to January 2017. See? It's just like she said. It's just a natural ebb and flow. Sometimes ice melts, but it comes back. See? It's almost gained back all of the ice that it melted in the same time. It's fine. But that's a weirdly specific span of time for someone to talk about, isn't it? Why would they just show you that? I mean, time goes back a little bit further than that, doesn't it? Let's zoom out a little bit further to, say, 2002.
Enjoy your American Ninja Warrior.
Oh, I forgot! These people are fucking liars! Ice sheets regaining mass in the colder parts of the year isn't unexpected and is in fact part of the process. Unfortunately, not all the melted ice comes back. The news piece is about one glacier doing better than expected, but this doesn't offset the clear general trend. If you were to draw a line here and pretend you'd found evidence the sheets were growing back as fast as they'd been melting, you would be doing a lie. Courtney is doing a version of that, while also pretending one glacier disproves a wider trend that's been documented for decades. The glacier is growing about as quickly as it was shrinking. Oh my god, the word about is doing some fucking legwork there, isn't it, Courtney? Every single time it's documented that an ice sheet or a glacier actually gains in size, there's always a conservative or some blogger willing to point at it and go, look, that proves there's not a problem. Look at this and only this. The science was lies. When the point isn't that sometimes there's more ice than there was before, or sometimes some of it comes back. The point is that, on the whole, there's less of it. We're losing more than we're gaining. One glacier is not an entire ice sheet. It's not unexpected that ice sheets grow, and the clock on how big ice sheets used to be didn't start 6 months ago. If everything's proceeding as normal, where did all this fucking water come from, Courtney? So, here's the thing. Let's think about this now. Crowder was wrong for a variety of reasons, one of which was so simple that all you had to do was point out that there's more than one ice sheet. The one on his website is debunked by zooming out on a graph. Nothing I've pointed out here is special or unique. Like I said, this stuff is obvious to anyone who's willing to read a paper for themselves or do almost any kind of critical thinking or fact-checking. What I want to draw attention to here is this obviousness itself. Because if Crowder cares about science and facts and reason and truth, etc., etc., blah, 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 how did Crowder miss this? I think it would be a mistake to interpret this as pure ignorance. A much better explanation is that Crowder's business model has nothing to do with finding the truth or rational discourse or raising anyone's consciousness. His business model is about serving a demographic of conservative people who already feel a certain way about the world, and the product he's selling is ideology. Crowder's work isn't about having a real debate or debunking the science. It's making an audience that thinks climate change is fake feel like they have a good reason to believe that. Crowder's audience is people who want their pre-existing beliefs validated. They don't actually want the truth. They want to feel like what they already think is the truth. And this, it turns out, is a profitable business model. Not just in terms of the ad revenue from the views you'll get when you're telling an audience what they want to be told and how smart they are for wanting to be told it, but also in terms of merchandising. Crowder doesn't sell brain pills.
Oh my
yet.
god.
He sells
Fucking
a
mug.
mug to drink them out of. You know what's genius as well? You can't actually just fucking buy the mug, like on his store. No, his store's just, you know, the fucking shittest merch ever. We had to discount the socialism baby onesie.
Socialism
Our
baby
warehouse
onesie.
is full of onesies that no one would ever buy. If you want to get into Crowder's #mug club, Crowder does a daily show for Blaze TV, basically Netflix for conservatives, and they charge a subscription of $99 a year. But if you do it through Crowder's website, they send you this mug. Made in China. So, the mug costs $99. You can't actually buy the mug. You cannot buy the mug. You have to $99. And this is the point, really. Crowder makes a decent living not having to do research, and instead serving an audience a piping hot daily serving of confirmation of their beliefs, which they eat up uncritically, because the point isn't learning, it's reassurance that they were already right. And then they all take a sip in unison from the most expensive utensil they'll ever own, which they bought specifically to signal that they support Reason Man and taking back the media? Is Crowder just mad that Fox News dropped him from the network? Crowder's duplicitous falsehoods work specifically because the audience wants to believe them, not because they're ignorant, but because they want to be. Crowder's specific grift is in using the right power words, truth, logic, rationality, reason, science, to mask this deliberate ignorance in a technicolor dreamcoat of intellect. So the incredibly poor work in his videos is because they know these people will eat it up, and trust that they did the research for them, so they don't have to. The ignorance of the audience occurs because they're only ever fed this stuff by their favorite conservative news websites and YouTubers and influencers, so they never have to stop and look at the real facts. They're convinced they are. They're just further down a chain designed to only feed them facts that they want. Once you're wired into the conservative echo chamber, follow conservative thinkers on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter, and read their news websites and buy their mugs and pills and books, you will only ever come into contact with facts and information that happens to confirm your worldview. And we can see here just how easy it is to take a very specific thing that seems to confirm it, abstract away any inconvenient truths, and then present it as proof that you were already right, and very smart and rational for believing it too. The work is shoddy, and the holes are poorly wallpapered over with scaremongering about the dangers of big government Mino-like. Not because they're genuinely trying to convince outsiders to change their minds, it's to try and protect the insiders from having to change their minds. If John Kerry and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are Earth's climate change archangels, then just let the motherfucker burn.
Archangels.
Ah, finally, someone partaking in rational discourse. These people need to be taken seriously. They have to invent a world where the problems that conservatives...
The sun is going down, it's getting dark in my room, oh my god.
...aren't really there. And frankly, I support this way of thinking. I would hate to have to live in the same world as horses. Weird,
this bit's great.
Smug little pricks with their eyes and teeth. But I've done some research, and it turns out that horses don't exist. Yay!
What kind of cake did you get this time? Is this from the multi-cake you told me about? You said you had a cake with multiple flavors. Ooh, a velvet, yummy.
Man, the scale of the problem is so big, isn't it? I can see why the climatologists I know try not to bring the topic up too much in conversation. It's just depressing, especially if you agree with them, isn't it? Thinking about the scope of the problem. A lot of sweeping changes will have to be made very quickly on a large scale, or we'll be stuck in an uphill battle against the climate in the future. And given that we can't really personally bring about many of those changes on our own, what's really left to do on planet Earth other than wait to see what happens and run out the clock eating Nutella straight out of the jar? Well, you could do that. And maybe sometimes you should. But Nutella is a sometimes food. And there are some things you can do about climate change, if you'd like to try.
The fucking...
I'm cleaning it. Wait, I don't
Turn the mic off, though.
Linked in the description is a great video by Simon Clark, a science YouTuber getting a PhD in climate physics, talking about what we ought to be looking into to deal with climate change. His suggestions take place on the level of what sources we use for power and changes in legislation of businesses whose actions directly affect the climate. I think this is important to recognize because I find a lot of people tend to embrace more personal solutions, like driving a more efficient car or using public transport or going vegan and so on, and it has to be acknowledged that these personal choices aren't the primary driver of climate problems in the first place. The wider policies are. It's very easy to give in to the idea that the solution lies in you reducing your personal emissions to create a sense of control and doing your part for this big and scary thing, but that effort maybe ought to be spent fighting to get the big things done, getting people thinking and providing support for meaningful changes. Basically just don't make it personal. Climate change isn't your fault. It's the Koch brothers' fault. Hey, Mortimer, what happened to my...
Mortimer, no!
You know who else has lots of information about
Can you tell
the
I've watched this
environment?
video 20
This video's
times?
sponsor, Curiosity.
No, I don't like eating ASMR, and if you try doing it in front of me, then I'm gonna kick your little butt! Get away from me!
They've recently expanded their library and there's more than 2,400 titles there now, including Climate, A Few Degrees Less, which breaks down the carbon cost of many key industries and what can be done to reduce them.
I don't like the way the mouth is turning out.
Pathways Project, a global consortium whose goal is to prevent future climate crisis. Access to Curiosity Stream starts at $2.99 a month, which is less than a jar of
That
Nutella
one looks
will cost you and
cuter. Mine looks
significantly better for your health.
horrible.
But if you sign up at curiositystream.com/hbomberguy and use hbomberguy as the promo code, the first 31 days are free, so you could watch documentaries and have a jar of Nutella. Although you shouldn't eat Nutella out of the jar. That was actually don't. Then again, I can't criticize people.
Violence!
There's literally 2 empty eggshells from some soft-boiled eggs I had like 2 days ago, just sitting on my desk directly under my mic.
Oh, better!
Like, seriously, listen. I just broke an eggshell in my hand that's just there on my desk. So, look. There's some good documentaries.
The good thing about needle felting is that it's forgiving.
Morally compromised corporate shill. It's time to talk about Patrick Moore.
No more mouth. He just doesn't have
Patrick
one now.
Moore is a
That's gonna be the
Canadian
back
activist
now.
and environmentalist. Moore was the leader of Greenpeace.
I
Canada
throw
for
you
about
in the
9
trash.
years. Moore is also in the climate denial game, but he's playing it on nightmare mode.
Nightmare mode.
His stance is that carbon dioxide levels are
Stay there.
affected by humans, but that an increase in CO2 is actually great. CO2 is what plants.
Yeah, it is fairly easy to fix stuff. Like, I mean, I don't want to do it to the rest of them, but like the fibers on their own are very terrible. Like this part, I can't really rip it, but this part where it's a lot thinner, I just gotta wiggle a little, and then I can tear it into pieces, and then I can put it back together. Luckily, wool is a cool material like that. Let me try making them first and then attaching them, because I think that's what the instructions said to do and what I ignored, because I was like, I'll just do them straight on the face, and then it turned out like shit. So let's try doing that in between my fingers.
CO2 is the most important nutrient for all life on Earth. So we've been skipping along on top of this low point for CO2 for a long time now, and it's about time somebody did something about it.
And so what if sea levels rise? Don't you know that humans are mostly water? We need it to live. It's good for us. Drink up, fucker.
Look at that fucking cup.
It's like Carlin said, the reason people came into existence is because the Earth wants plastic.
Oh my god, he's doing George Carlin, but not for a joke.
And maybe the reason people came into existence is because the atmosphere wants a little more carbon dioxide for the plants. Who knows?
Who
There
knows?
were people whose job was to find out. Oh, you think those people are paid shills who are just pretending it might be caused by humans for money?
Paid shills, unlike you, biggest paid
This
shill
is
of our
NASA at
fucking
its
lives.
worst. They do good things too, but they also collect over $1 billion in climate change research money from the federal government in the United States. And they do this. CO2 controls Earth's temperature to keep getting that funding.
Here he is complaining about a comedy sketch Bill Nye did lately on the basis that he's being so mean about CO2, he's demonizing it and hurting its feelings. Has anyone noticed?
The other issue with not having a handle for this is my fingers distinctly smell of metal now. Get yourself a handle. My fingers smell gross and of metal. I'm gonna have to go wash them like 5 times to get it off.
Is the fire extinguisher on the table as the earth burns? Many fire extinguishers are filled with CO2. The science guy could have put the fire out with carbon dioxide, which he wrongly demonizes as the cause of the fire. I hate to break it to you, Mr. Moore, but Bill Nye was employing experimental technique some people might not have heard of before called a visual metaphor.
Is that like a little better?
I'm not sure if people have noticed, but this isn't actually literally happening to the planet. The Earth isn't actually on fire. What's actually happening is CO2 is contributing to trapping more heat in the atmosphere, causing a warming effect, which is tough to represent visually.
It does have a distinct smell,
though. When a fire
though.
extinguisher is used, the CO2 doesn't actually react with the fire.
Because that's also been something that I've noticed when doing like hand sewing, which is a lot of holding a needle. And I mean, I think part of it is that you get the metal wet, which creates something of a reaction just because bodies are generally wet. You sweat through every part of your body, I'm pretty sure. That's just a human thing. So I think that's part of it, is like this metal's wet now, which wet metal is also stinky. I don't know. Someone give me a video on the
to stop it
metal
from being
science.
Fire. It actually displaces the oxygen that keeps the fire going, which helps extinguish it, with the secondary effect that the CO2 in the pressurized container is colder than room temperature, and therefore the CO2 is not a magic turn fire off gas. Having more in the atmosphere doesn't mean fires will go out easier. God damn it.
You're wrong, H-bomber lie. You can't have too much of something if it's good for you. Now watch as I consume enough brain force to surpass even Ben Shapiro's power.
No! Reasonablest bear! Don't!
Your
body can't take that much alertness and free thinking.
At the end of the clip, Bill tries to blow the fire out, but did you know that breath also contains carbon dioxide? Checkmate, globeheads. I just proved...
Oh no! He died from having too much IQ. Rest in peace. If you didn't like that character, he's dead. He's gone now. Since quitting Greenpeace over differences in policy, and Greenpeace have done everything they can to distance themselves from him since he left, Moore has become a consultant for businesses that get a bad rap from environmental organisations. As a former higher-up at Greenpeace, Moore's a great catch for these industries. It's a compelling narrative. Here's someone who really did care about the planet, but he's come out against the people who say we're being unethical and saying that actually we're good. So we must be. Stephen Crowder's second and third most popular videos about the climate are interviews with Moore. He's also gone on PragerU as well to list off his regular talking points, but in an even more stilted manner. I think something's wrong with PragerU's teleprompter. This keeps happening when people go on. He's just a real get, you know? He's the guy from Greenpeace, and he says global warming's not real. We got him, we just have to keep quoting him. It's like we're right. We don't have to check or anything. They don't drag this guy onto everything because he's right, because he's not. They drag him on because they can say Greenpeace founder debunks climate in their video titles, and everyone who wants to believe this can go, oh, well, that sounds about right. And, you know, not actually check what he's saying or anything, which is all wrong. Basically everything he says about the climate can be debunked if you question it, but no one watching this is going to, are they? They think these people have already done it for them. Moore positions himself as the sensible environmentalist. You know, not like those senseless ones that accept the science and for some reason think we should do something about it. I suppose it is sensible, in one sense of the word, to take money from big companies to try to rehabilitate their image. I'm sure the Koch brothers pay very well. I hate to sound like I'm beating a dead dog here.
Dog!
But I wasn't joking when I said that. This talk here is at the Heartland Institute, a conservative and libertarian think tank dedicated mostly to opposing the scientific outlook on climate change. It receives a very large portion of its funding from the Koch
The one on
Foundation,
the
an organization
packaging
founded and
still
run
looks
by the
cuter.
Koch brothers, two incredibly wealthy, ultra-billionaire oil barons who have spent literally decades spreading this kind of misinformation. It's almost as if this whole thing is just a bunch of rich people trying to hold on to their money by paying to spread lies. By the way, they're one of the main donors to PragerU and the Rubin Report. What a surprise. It's actually pretty clear why Moore's imagination immediately goes to being paid to support a scientific conclusion. After all, that is what he's doing. Patrick Moore's denialism is wrong, and obviously wrong, because of course it is, and his corporate cheerleading is just immoral. But he goes one step further sometimes in a way that I find special. You see, with denialism and with general anti-science fakery, there's a line.
It just looks like it's making
cross.
a face.
There's a reason why a lot
It's
of these
going,
people say things like, "Oh well,
sticking
you
out
know,
its lower lip a
I'm
lot.
not an expert, but."
So
here's my
round
take
and
on the
cute.
climate change issue. On the climate change issue, I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert in reading the studies.
Don't worry, Ben, you didn't have to volunteer that information. It was already obvious. This tacit admission of potential ignorance is an important part of the trickery, because if you claimed to actually know what you were talking about, it would become crystal clear you were deliberately lying when it turned out you were so obviously wrong. But if you say you're an amateur, there's deniability. If Shapiro says something wrong, well, like he said, he hadn't looked that hard into it, and he's not an expert, so for all you know, he wasn't lying.
My purpose here is not at all to pretend to be a scientist, but to get you, the viewer, to think about real science.
Real science, but only the ones I represent. Real science, but don't look at the rest of them. Just look at what I'm telling you.
I'm not pretending to be a scientist. I just want you to have
Where'd
a
the
think
eyeballs go?
about
There's
the
the
one
eyeballs.
and only one piece of evidence I'm going to show
There's
you.
no.
With
There's
all
only one ice sheet, and it's growing. Do not check.
bullshit, even with ridiculous bullshit, even with obvious lies, there is a line. I'm establishing this because, in 2014, Patrick Moore tripped on his own dick and fell all the way through the line and onto a live rail and electrocuted himself. Metaphorically, of course. I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm referring to here. It's the thing Patrick Moore is known for more than anything now. I'm referring, of course, to the weed killer incident. Okay, so some background here. There's a product
I'm gonna
called
put this on
Roundup, which
later.
was originally produced by Monsanto but has later been acquired by Bayer. It's based on a chemical called
And then
glyphosate, a chemical
arms.
Monsanto discovered and patented, and it's the most used herbicide in the United States, and on the planet for that matter. However,
None of them have original style, because you notice he's also not. Well, I mean, he's trying to be scientific, but they never come up with original ideas. If they come with original ideas, they sound like complete bullshit, and everybody is like, "This is bullshit," and so they're forced to stop. But they're just really bad at making up original ideas, so they always just copy other people. They copy each other. They copy others. It's crazy.
there is some
Crazy.
evidence that Roundup causes cancer if you come into heavy, repeated contact with it. There isn't evidence, to my knowledge, that crops treated with it become dangerous to eat, or that limited domestic use is dangerous in this regard, but farmers who use it in large amounts and other agricultural workers, like groundskeepers, have an increased likelihood to be diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a form of blood cancer. Roundup's current owners, Bayer, have recently been ordered to pay billions of dollars in damages after it was found Roundup had failed to inform customers of the potential risks of using their product. Over 300 more federal lawsuits have been filed, and Costco recently discontinued selling Roundup. It was also banned in
Gonna
France
do
in
some
January. While all of these allegations were
Oh
happening,
god, it's hard to see the
French
white against the
journalist
white.
Paul Moreira asked Moore about the safety and potential risks of glyphosate, and Moore, in an attempt to defend the herbicide, said this.
I do not believe that glyphosate in Argentina is causing increases in cancer. You can drink a whole quart of it and it won't hurt you.
Now, obviously you shouldn't drink weed killer. This was either a mistake or a lie, but Moreira had a sense of humor and asked him if he would like to drink some.
You want to drink some? We have some here.
I'd be happy to, actually.
But then, click! You can see it in his eyes. You can see him realize he's taken the lie to support the big corporation a bit too far, and he just said he'd be happy to drink weed killer. What follows is, I feel, one of the most informative clips about the ideology that underpins denialism in history.
I'd be happy to, actually, but not really, but
Not really?
I know it wouldn't hurt me.
If you say so, I have some glyphosate.
No, I'm not stupid.
Ah, okay, so you...
No, but I know
so
that...
it's dangerous,
I
right?
know, no, people try to commit suicide with it and fail fairly regularly.
Tell the truth.
It's not dangerous to humans. No, it's not.
So you're ready to drink one glass of
No,
glyphosate?
I'm not an idiot.
This is a funny clip and it was shared widely when it happened. Although Moore is often credited as a Monsanto lobbyist, which isn't true, a Monsanto spokesperson denies him ever having been a paid lobbyist. But his cheerleading for a big company, and his being mistaken for a lobbyist, is unsurprising when, in the almost 30 years since he left Greenpeace, he makes his living lobbying for companies like Monsanto and leveraging his former Greenpeace status. I mean, he named his company Green Spirit for Sobek's sake. But this
For Sobek's sake. That's a reference to another video where he's like the god of the sun, Sobek, and a bunch of bullshit.
Else that beneath the veneer of just being skeptical
It's an
of the
Egyptian god of the
scientists and their
sun.
agendas lies people whose job is
Obscure references. It's the best.
not at all related
He's so
to finding or sharing the
He's so
truth.
cute.
Moore realised he'd fucked up
So
and
cute.
immediately fled the interview. Think about the disconnect as he flicked between his defence of a company's product, claiming it was safe to drink and he'd be happy to, and his rational brain, the brain that actually knows the truth, his understanding that drinking it might actually be really bad and he shouldn't take that risk. But he accidentally took that extra step, said he would be happy to, and now has to argue that he would love to drink some, but he won't because he's not stupid. Climate denialism isn't just a bunch of people who are wrong. It's a bunch of people being paid to be wrong on purpose, to deliberately spread doubt of the truth, mislead the people who are honestly trying to be skeptical, and confirm the beliefs of the ignorant who want to pretend they're skeptical, and ultimately this contributes to perpetuating the profits of a few rich individuals who do not want to be made to reduce their profits or risk being held accountable for the effect their profiteering is having on the world we live on, at the expense of that world. To pretend that there is a real, legitimate, non-astroturfed debate about whether climate change is caused by humans and represents a potential threat is to give in to propaganda from people who are lying and know they're lying and are so used to...
Tip I learned from watching YouTube videos is it is good to leave a little bit loose for parts that you want to attach so that they are easier to attach.
lying, that they will tell you it's safe to drink a weed killer that might be giving the farmers who work with it cancer. They will tell you that being alarmed about a credible threat to humanity's future makes you an alarmist. They will lie to your fucking face while telling you they're the true warriors of science and logic.
Oh, I like
Something
the
can
wing.
still be done about the climate. It simply requires dispelling these corporate lies, seeing past the people selling you the chance to pretend you know better than scientists, agitating for real political change, and advocating for a culture that actually accepts science, actually employs reason and skepticism, and doesn't just pretend they're magic words that can be used to make you sound clever. Almost everyone thinks science and facts and logic and truth are great. We all agree that those words are lovely and mean good things. The problem is a lot of people set out to prove those things are on their side, instead of following those things where they lead. It's very easy to be misled by rhetoric into thinking that one idea is more reasonable than another, and it's even easier to find someone who's willing to tell you that what you think right now is already the reasonable thing. That doesn't make you actually right, though. I'm not a very smart person, and this isn't a self-deprecating joke I'm doing here. Everyone who thinks Dark Souls 2 is bad can attest to this already. I remember once I went to mail a letter and accidentally put the sunglasses in my other hand into the mailbox, and I just tried to quietly erase the memory
He's the most
of
dominant
watching
little
the sunglasses
chicken.
fade out of view and then drop from my hands as at the very last moment my brain went, hang on, I'm saying this because while humans can be very smart about some things in specific, sometimes humans are, in general, very bad about a lot of things. It's very easy to look at a horizon and say, well, it looks flat to me, or to discount the work of scientists because, well, it just looks a different way to you. And it's very easy to dismiss
Kiss
anyone who
little
might be
head
an
fluff.
authority on an issue as, well, an argument from authority. After all, a PhD is just a piece of paper. It doesn't necessarily mean what that person says is right. And you would be right to assume that. But I also think it's wrong to use that as a deliberate strategy to avoid dealing with the fact that sometimes people do know better than you about complex issues.
Yeah, you can sort of see right here. If I pull too hard, it'll pull it out. But you can see how there's one of the places I poked, there's like a little stitch that goes down and gets caught further down in. And that's one of the things that holds it in place. This guy strongly disagrees with you. He loves Dark Souls 2. And everybody is like, you're so wrong. It's the worst in the franchise. And he's like, it's my favorite in the franchise. I'll fight you.
If you find it easy to
I think
discount
there's a video on
hundreds
it.
of
Maybe, I
people's
don't know.
life's
I
work
don't remember.
because you reckon you know better based on one paper you've read, then you might as well have put your brain in the mailbox. So it turns out there's an advantage to being as rubbish as me. It means you have to put effort into learning things and develop a respect and appreciation for the people who put so much time into learning something, and an understanding that maybe they do know more than you. When I find myself disagreeing with the conclusions of a scientist, I ask myself what they might know that I don't, and go look for that and see if that changes my mind. And when I find a scientist that I happen to find agreeable, I immediately think, well, if they think like I do, then, well, something's up. Let's see what the others have to say and why they might think they're wrong and what their reasons are. The true test of skepticism isn't in finding ways to debunk your opponents or change anyone else's mind. It's in finding ways to understand when you are wrong and learn to change your mind. Sometimes that's easier than others. For example, in this instance, a lot of people who currently deny climate change can freely admit that they were lied to. They were misled by people who only showed them facts that appeared to confirm their beliefs. They hadn't really thought that hard about it. In fact, their thinking had basically been done for them. They'd given over the thinking to someone else who it turned out they couldn't trust, and now they can think for themselves and maybe come to different conclusions. I changed a lot the day I realized that there are people out there who make a living making you feel good for believing what they tell you. And frankly, it gives me hope that that happened to me. Because I know I'm a foolish person, and if I can learn and grow and change, then there's hope for all of us. And I believe that even you, yes, you can one day come to accept the truth that horses don't exist.
Not real. They don't exist.
That's what this video is about. Goodbye. Are you having trouble attracting a mate? Is no one responding to your dick pics despite listing the Shawshank?
Let's see if we can find... I know, so many people need to be like, I'm dumb as hell. It's important to know that you are, on occasion, stupid. Let me see if I can find if there is a Dark Souls video. Not really. I think I might talk about it in the Bloodborne video, I'm not sure. Oh no, there it is, in defense of Dark Souls 2. Here you go. He's gonna tell you why it's not the worst in the franchise.
This from the video I made about
I have not seen Dark Souls, but anyways.
Bloodborne. I realised partway through recording it that attempts to defend and talk up Dark Souls 2 were worming their way into the Bloodborne video. So instead of making the Bloodborne video even longer, I decided to cut those parts out and then put them in their own video. Then I realised this video made no sense because it was just a mishmash of stuff lifted from a different video pasted together without context, so I remade it all, which took bloody ages. This game is unfairly maligned. I think Dark Souls 1 was incredible, and people who really liked that one had kind of unrealistic expectations and got inevitably burned by the sequel being different or failing to be as spectacular and new as its predecessor when it came out. Judging it as a game, I think it's really good. It's not as good as Bloodborne, but it's a little bit better than Dark Souls 1. Oh, I mean, in my opinion, it's a little bit better than Dark Souls 1. Okay, it's about as good as Dark Souls 1, but it has some differences I prefer. Okay, it's not as good as Dark Souls 1, but the changes were an interesting and useful risk that's more valuable existing than not existing, and is genuinely better than just getting more of Dark Souls 1, which we already have and you can still just go back to and play if you want to. And I personally think I had more fun with it. I think the Emerald Herald is a better waifu than Guinevere.
700 million! Boo-ba-doo, boo-boo-ba-doo.
We might as well start with a discussion of the health system, which I feel is the core building block of the Souls games, because it dictates the rhythm and structure of the gameplay and creates the weighty sense of challenge and difficulty the series is known for. Ironically, it's very easy to just make something hard. Making a game challenging, while also being fun, requires a very dense and carefully arranged interplay of mechanics. This is the tightrope games have to walk. How do you make a player feel challenged so that their success is a rewarding experience,
Going slow, so
without
even if I
making them
stab
feel
myself,
overly punished or
it won't
simply
hurt
frustrated?
that much.
This balance is difficult to execute. The reason Souls games are difficult in the first place is because of the way damage works in the games. If everything was the same, but all attacks did a half or a quarter the damage they do, the game would be fundamentally different, less challenging, and less fun as a result. Things wouldn't be as weighty because the damage wasn't as important, and dodging wouldn't feel as necessary, and so on. This is why a lot of first-person shooters have a difficulty mode they explicitly recommend over the others, because games usually manipulate difficulty by making the damage sliders be higher or lower, and in most games there's a specific amount of damage attacks are most enjoyable to be working with. Souls games have no difficulty setting because there's almost no way to make the game easier without fundamentally altering the thing that makes the games fun. In a Souls game, you generally can only take a couple of hits before dying. Healing, therefore, is an important mechanic. How do you let the player gain health back? This is an important mechanic to talk about because it defines the flow of the rest of the ensuing game experience.
Stabbed myself, but it was fine because I was going
no
slowly.
Whatsoever, or you healed instantly without there even being an animation, or, as in Bloodborne, you could heal back damage you took if you retaliated quickly. These utterly change the rest of the mechanics and therefore the rest of the game experience because they change how the player is led to interact with them. The guy who gets to decide how players get health back actually is responsible for more of the game than the people who designed the levels in a weird way. Souls games have done this a variety of ways with a variety of impacts on core gameplay. In Demon's Souls, you healed by using different kinds of grass you found or purchased. Stopping to grab a bite, however, was very slow and deliberate, and it stopped you dead in your tracks. While this is fine if you already beat the thing that damaged you, in a lot of direct combat situations, stopping to heal is either not going to work or is going to get you killed. It's a calculated risk every time, and in boss fights, finding places in the rhythm of the battle when healing was a good idea was key to survival for people who couldn't always avoid taking that damage. There is something of a downside to this, however. Firstly, while it is very calculated and purposeful and challenging to heal, should it be? It's fair, but is it good to be in a situation where the most pressing thing, trying to heal, is a really bad idea that would itself kill you? A lot of early players die while mashing the heal button. That's not fun, even if simply not doing that is technically the sound response. Secondly, in Demon's Souls you immediately have access to all the healing items you'll ever need. You can buy as many of them as you want as soon as the game properly starts and always go back for more, and they're fairly easy to farm from enemies. This means that if they master the timing to heal in battle, they're practically unkillable and can't be worn down by attrition as they progress through a level. As long as no one encounter can fully drain your life bar, which can still happen a lot, Demon's Souls difficulty is reduced quite a bit from where it was probably meant to be. You technically have access to an infinite amount of life, as long as you use it properly. Dark Souls replaced this health system entirely with the Estus Flask, a healing item which you couldn't buy more of. You had a limited amount of uses which recharged at bonfires or when you died. Yes, I know you can also get health back by using a humanity, but doing that burns such a rare resource that I couldn't really regard it as a source of healing, unless you're one of those good at Dark Souls people I've heard so much about. This meant you had a finite amount of life at any given time. This also means attrition becomes a factor. Damage you take is health you aren't getting back until you reach a place that restores Estus. This can make the game more interesting and more risky. It also means that there's a net maximum amount of times you can possibly be hit by enemies or a boss in a single run. In this regard, Dark Souls is tremendously more difficult, but also more satisfying because of the new element of challenge it adds. However, you're still left basically prone while you do it, and it still takes just long enough that getting killed while trying to heal is an annoying and common possibility. And it means if you're on a run to a boss and you take a certain amount...
Okay, I learned this the other day, so now I must teach you. Prone means you are lying on your stomach. Supine means you are lying on your back. Supine, you are lying on your spine. And prone, you are lying on your stomach. So if you're ever going to describe someone lying down, don't get it wrong. I learned that the other day.
Out of damage.
We can continue.
You feel like you're already doomed on this run, because there's no way you can get past them with that little health remaining. So you have to go back, or just go on a doomed run and die and come back again. And that can kind of wear down your ability to keep playing the game, and enjoy it, which is a big deal in games. Dark Souls 2, in my opinion, fixes some of this pretty well. Firstly, it takes an age to drink again, making it even more deliberate than the Demon's Souls one, and your health actually recovers over a very short amount of time instead of instantaneously. This forces the player to not even consider healing until they're free and clear, because there's no chance they'll just get the Estus to their lips before getting hit and stay alive. Ironically, by being even more slow and deliberate, it further disencourages the thing that causes annoyance when it doesn't work, dying while trying to heal. However, Dark Souls 2 also supplements this with life gems. Life gems are a little bit like the grass, down to being purchasable and coming in numerous sizes. They take a while to use, and they heal over time, very slowly. This is...
Sometimes, in video games, they'll say, you've been knocked prone, and then the character's lying on their back, and it's like, that's not what prone means! Listen, it doesn't actually matter. Use whatever fucking words you want. At the end of the day, who gives a shit? But technically, that is what they mean, so, like, you can technically use them right and be mad if you want, but also, who cares, so...
Genius. You see, attrition isn't necessarily a fun kind of challenge. It can create a nice feeling and a risk that you'll be worn down too far to make it anywhere, but you know what isn't fun? Knowing you're definitely fucked, because you'll most likely lose the remaining health you have before you get anywhere new. Knowing you're at the limit your healing can possibly take you with your abilities, and you're just not good enough, and you're gonna have to keep playing this area over and over, or go farming and level up or something. By bringing back theoretically infinite health, but making it heal very slowly, the creators have introduced a way to get around this annoyance without making the player feel totally invincible. They also have tactical uses. Since they take a while to use and are slow, they're risky to use in fights, but if you're good at not immediately dying, they still heal you. So you can run out of Estus and still have access to a source of healing that requires some skill to use effectively, which is kind of cool and smart. They're also useful for if you expect to take damage, but don't think you'll be able to stop and heal later. In some boss fights, using a gem when you get the chance, and then attacking means you'll get some health back, even if you get hit a bit later. This is frankly a welcome addition. I've heard the criticism that the addition of life gems utterly destroys the delicate balance of the entire game, and it's erased the majesty of the Estus flask and its purposeful limitation of a player's maximum amount of mistakes. This, in a sense, is an accurate analysis. The balance is shifted. However, it's shifted in favour of the player in a way that's overall positive for the experience. Bloodborne probably does the best with its use of healing. Blood vials are simultaneously infinite and finite. You can buy a bunch quite easily, but only have 20 on hand at any time. The more you find in a level are immediately usable if you had less than 20 on you, so you can use more than 20 if you use one in a fight and then one drops from a corpse later, which happens fairly often. The healing's also quicker, and you have a lot of control over movement while you do it. This is good. I just talked about how good it was being made tactical the way it was in 2, but ultimately as a mechanic, I think it's more enjoyable to be able to heal quickly, because dying while healing, or dying because you were unable to heal because tactically it would have killed you, is just never fun or interesting. If I was to grade all 4 games' healing methods, I would put Dark Souls last here, because I don't personally think its method of attrition is all that fun when it comes down to it, and the precise amount of time it takes to heal and the way it immobilizes you makes it always a tantalizing risk you think you might just be able to make, which means more players die trying to heal in this game than any other. I think Dark Souls 2 is the second best behind Bloodborne. And hey, that's pretty good. One criticism I see made a lot about Dark Souls 2 is that a lot of the bosses, and also a lot of enemies, are what amounts to humanoid people in armor. This isn't just an aesthetic complaint, it's also a problem in the sense that a lot of the fights with enemies amount to learning how they swing a weapon, how to get past their weapon, and which direction their swings go. And since there's a finite amount of ways a humanoid can swing a sword, it's possible to even start confusing enemies and their attacks for each other. A lot of bosses are very similar, unlike the previous game, which has more of a variety of unique bosses like the Gaping Dragon or Nito or Seath the Scaleless, breaking up the monotony. And indeed, there are quite a lot of humanoid opponents who fight with swords in what amounts to a duel. But here's the thing, I'm going to make a different argument here. I'm not going to argue that the bosses are all sufficiently different, which in my opinion they are, or that there are plenty of different kinds of boss fight breaking up the monotony, which there is, but instead I'm going to play the wild card and be the needless contrarian that people say I am. I'm going to argue in favour.
This person just read the Karma Sutra.
I think the best kinds of fighting games are against enemies on roughly equal footing with the player. All games, not just Souls.
Video, can you stop chug-a-lugging? My god. Should I add another one? I feel like it needs a tiny bit more.
Games. There's something viscerally satisfying about facing off with someone making use of the same skill set as you. The best boss fights in Devil May Cry are the fights against Virgil or Dante or another human-sized opponent with another ridiculous sword. The best boss fight in God Hand, and also gaming history, is against Azel, who has the Devil Hand, and so on. It's far more compelling to fight a person making use of skills you yourself could be using than someone with far more powers than you or who is an incomprehensible mess. It feels good, to put it simply. Dark Souls had a couple of regular enemies in the game who scratched this itch for me, like the NPC invasions, like Manny to Mildred, Lautrec, the Crestfallen guy when he goes hollow, or Oscar when you return to the Asylum, or Rickard. These kinds of fight are the best and most memorable. In fact, I just remember those offhand. I didn't even put those in the script. I just decided to list them because I just know them all. PvP is so fun in these games for this exact reason. You're fighting people on the same footing as you with access to the same resources. It's just great. It's a puzzle where you all pick your poison and then you fight to see who is poisoned the most. But in Dark Souls, the only boss fight that comes really close to getting this right is Artorias in the DLC. Ornsteinen's kind of did it, but you were too busy dealing with the other guy, so you could never really focus on the aspect of the fight that's like this straightforward, cool duel, you know? And then they get really big and then it becomes a very different kind of thing. Artorias is a really, really good fight. He's not exactly on equal footing with you. He's presented as a very strong person, larger than life, literally, corrupted by evil, but he's a brilliant fight because he never comes off as ridiculous. He even dodges and rolls the way a person would. You get this fantastic mix of outsmarting a fellow consciousness trying to beat you in a straight fight. Before Dark Souls 2, I would describe Knight Artorias as the platonic ideal of a Dark Souls boss fight. It's the most pared down, purified form of single combat with another swordsman in the Souls games, and that's really, to me, the best thing. Dark Souls 2 has a lot more of this kind of fight than the previous two games, and more than Bloodborne also, and this, I must stress for me, this is my opinion, is a gift. The Pursuer, the Lost Sinner, the Looking Glass Knight, Velstadt, and in the DLCs the Fume Knight and Sir Alon and the Burnt Ivory King. In my opinion, these fights are what the Souls games' mechanics are vessels for. This is what the game should be built around. There's even the old Dragon Slayer, a version of the Ornstein and Smurs fight that indulges in this aspect more than fighting two people at once could do. I remember telling my friends that I'd wished there'd been a one-on-one fight with a character like Ornstein, perhaps as a mini-boss later on, and those friends played the PS3 version of 2 while I waited for it to come out on PC. The first thing they did when it came out was tell me where to go for a cool surprise over Skype, and I got the fight I'd wanted from the previous game. I'm sure people complained that this was a needless rehash or fan-pandering, but it was literally a fight I specifically thought would have been fun and missed not having. And I'm glad someone working on Dark Souls 2 agreed with me.
He was the fan they were pandering to.
Honestly, when I saw early critics saying, Dark Souls 2 is pretty great, but you fight a lot of dudes in armor, I remember immediately thinking, hell yes. There are other kinds of fight, and it's good to have them, but they are the best. Perhaps one of the worst things about Demon's Souls and Dark Souls 1 is they didn't properly master this idea yet. Demon's Souls had the Penetrator, don't laugh, and some decent NPC fights like Garl Vinland, the actual final boss of the Valley of Defilement. I mentioned the ones Dark Souls had, but 2 elevated these fights to their proper place as the core kind of fight you did the most, and I love it for that. The Heidi Knights are criminally underrated. They deliberately look and fight very differently from the Black Knights of Dark Souls 1, and if you let them get up, which you should do because why else are you attacking them, they sit down and do nothing on purpose until you want to fight them, the fight is usually pretty cool. They kill me a lot, so I can't show me beating them here really easily, which would have been nice footage to have. But the narrative
you were not supposed to laugh! You said don't laugh and you laughed.
But with just a slight change in perspective, it becomes clear that the developers had a really good new idea, which was to use more of a kind of fight that was vastly underutilized in previous games and worked really well.
I'm loving
Does
him.
Does that really count as a new idea? Yeah, sure. Well, I'm going to claim it is at least, and you can't stop me.
Anywhere else?
It's a fundamental change in the makeup of the game, and in my opinion, it's for the better. That's not to say that's the only kind of boss fight, though. Like in Dark Souls, there are plenty of different kinds of fight breaking up the monotony against bigger bosses like the Last Giant. There's unique one-of-a-kind fights like the one with Scorpioness Najka, who visually resembles Quelaag, but is a very different kind of fight. But there's all kinds. There's the Royal Rat Vanguard, there's the Congregation, there's the Covetous Demon, there's Mr. Chariot. And there's the Dark Lurker, if you can be bothered to go do all the stuff that you need to do to fight him, which I couldn't, so I didn't get any footage of it. I've also heard the criticism that there are too many bosses that consist of fights with large groups, and this is proof of the game's poor design.
Similar problems extend to other
It's
boss fights.
cute
which
that
seem to follow
way.
the mantra, if you
It's
can't
not
make it good,
supposed
make it
to.
difficult.
It's not supposed to be realistic. The seats just look the size they are. Imagine them as buttons. It's a little purse. It's like a little purse. See, it's a little purse. I think they're a good size.
By adding
Fuck
more
you.
stuff.
This is Matthew Matosis. His Dark Souls 2 critique video came out just over a month after the release of the game in April 2014. It blew up somewhat on the internet, to the point that a lot of the times I see someone in person or online talking about Dark Souls 2, they're often using criticisms that can be heard in this video, and many who don't like the game will cite it as a source for their explanation of why. In fact, when asking viewers for criticisms that they would want to see me respond to, the bulk of them linked this video, and most of the people that didn't, did so because they knew for certain I would have already seen this one by now. We're dealing with a piece of criticism that had, in its own way, quite a fundamental impact on discourse surrounding the game. The arguments got copied, repeated, referenced, and in many ways I think the prevailing dismissive attitudes towards the game's quality started to crystallise as a result of this video. That's not to say the video is literally to blame for negativity towards Dark Souls 2, but regardless, it is necessary that this critique be defeated and destroyed at all costs.
The mechanics of the Souls games are built for one.
Have you seen this video that he's talking about, or no? I haven't watched all that many Dark Souls videos, so I haven't, but...
One-on-one engagements, thanks to its slow attack animations, which are uninterruptible once they start, and a lock-on camera, which focuses heavily on a single foe.
This early criticism is an interesting one. The claim is that adding more enemies into the game and also into some boss fights is a lazy attempt to increase difficulty, and that this is bad because Souls games are specifically designed to work best against single enemy encounters. Matthew Matosis is entitled to his opinion, and I respect that, but here's why this is a lie. There are absolutely ways of dealing with larger numbers of crowds. It just requires different behaviour than how you normally deal with enemies when there's just one or two. Crowd control is a different skill than the one that you're normally required to test, but it's one that's worth testing and really isn't in previous games. I remember God Hand being criticised for having too many enemies for an engine that was claimed to only really work best in one-on-one fights. But you can look up people playing it and see there's plenty of crowd control, but not if you always play the way you do against just one opponent at a time.
Take the Prowling Magus fight, for example. If you want to kill one of the crawling undead littering this fight, your eyes need to be taken off the casters at the back in order to lock on.
Ah, you see, here's your problem. Matthew makes the supposedly obvious criticism that locking on makes it hard to see your enemy, so the fight isn't well designed, or fights against groups are inherently bad in this type of game or something. But why would you lock on? You see, the Dark Souls series has this amazing feature where, using the right stick, you can rotate the camera to show anything you want on the screen. You can manually control the camera yourself. When you think about it, his argument actually is that the lock-on system works best against single enemies.
Little purse!
And he's right about that. But that's why you don't.
What if I had
lock
more
on in a
seats? Would that
fight
make it
against
look less
multiple
like a
enemies.
ghost face to you?
Arguably, the main lesson you're taught as early on as the first real areas is that enemies are attacking from all over the place, and you ought to keep your wits about you more than just pressing the button that focuses on one person and hoping for the best. This is a game that prides itself on expecting you to look where you're going, even as far back as the first game, with the guy hiding behind the doorway and people hiding in corners even all the way over in Bloodborne. The lock-on system is a tool to be utilised carefully, just like every other ability and mechanic. Matt found the lock-on function was bad in this scenario, and concluded that it was a flaw with the game. The challenge in this boss fight, like with the rats, is to avoid getting swarmed and put into a bad situation, to keep track of yourself and navigate carefully. If you locked directly onto one of the enemies, you would have a problem, and that means you don't do that. Dark Souls 2 uses fights like this and a generally different sort of level design to teach you that in this world, sometimes focusing down on a specific individual is a mistake.
What if I added like one there and one there, like little tinies?
Lesson and kept trying to play it the exact way he played the previous.
We just doomed it to Ghost Face Strawberry.
The time you fight against the two Dragon Riders, and there's a cute little clip I want to show where he locks onto one and then has to angle himself precisely so he can see the two of them.
The twin Dragon Riders are another example of this. You want to avoid attacks from both of them while periodically damaging one of them, but in order to do so you need to lock onto one and position yourself in such a way so you can see the other.
This clip is meant to show how bad the lock-on system is in two-person fights, and therefore how poorly designed this fight is for putting this guy all the way over there. But the thing is, you could just not hit the lock-on button. You could just not do that. You can aim the camera wherever you want. You can still dodge.
It's a ghost face with green hair and a chicken backpack.
I looked back over the footage of me doing this
You're
fight, and I
rude.
didn't lock on at all until one of them was dead and it became a good idea to completely focus on one enemy. This naturally occurred to me because this is how Dark Souls 2 teaches you to play. I honestly think the mechanics and the way they're utilised in the first two games has gotten so ingrained in people who liked those two that it makes them play weirdly in games that work slightly
You're gonna have
differently
to
or
stop
have different
after
kinds
this,
of
'cause it's
challenge,
just getting
and
too
this
dark
strikes
in my
them
room
as
to
a
see.
flaw. I got some criticism on my last video that it's wrong to say it's possible to play a game wrong, and there's a lot of ways of playing Dark Souls, and they're all equally valid if that's how the player wants to do it. And yeah, kinda, but all I can say is I can definitely see why Matthew Matosis and other critics had a less good time with Dark Souls 2 if this is how they approached it. This looks a whole lot like playing the game wrong and blaming the game for it. I still do really bad in this fight though. Note to self, just cut away from this quicker in the final edit. Also, we need to edit out the part where I say this, please. Matthew is still trying to use the lock-on mechanic in fights, even as late as the Watcher and Defender bosses, and he's still using a shield. Aw, bless. Someone really liked the previous games and tried real hard not to unlearn what they learned there. This kind of criticism sheds light on the critical perspective that approached the game in the first place. Players who went into the game expecting it to be exactly like the previous ones inevitably did badly in these sections and seemingly blamed the game for it. Joseph Anderson,
I usually
a
have the
critic who
windows
put out 3 videos
closed.
about Dark Souls in late 2015 and was
So they're
much
not
less
super
negative
bright.
about
I
the
guess I
game,
can-
similarly doesn't use the lock-on feature in many of the fights he shows in his video, and like me, he fought most
There,
of them
open
without
the
using a
blinds.
shield
They
either.
don't help that
In the
much,
same manner that
honestly.
shields are fine, but not if they engender passivity, the lock-on system is a great mechanic that can accidentally
open the blinds
engender a
'cause I just
reliance
use
upon
lamps.
it. Also, Monster Hunter, a series many regard as very similar in a lot of ways,
I'm in a
has
basement
basically
anyways,
no lock-on
so-
functionality whatsoever, and the subhuman criminals who love Monster Hunter seem to do just fine using it to see the enemies however they want. That's not to say Monster Hunter wouldn't benefit from having one, but if it did have one, it would probably be something to use sparingly, much like in Dark Souls 2. Also, it's worth remembering that this type of boss has been present in Souls games for a long time. You might remember, I don't know, the Phalanx, the first real boss in Demon Souls. It's a fight about balancing the interplay between the actual opponent and the numerous creatures that break off from it and act independently, threatening to surround and overwhelm you. Then, right after, there's the Tower Knight boss fight. Geez, the first 2 bosses in the first game in the series, and both of them use mechanics Matthew Matosis concluded are inherently antithetical to the core of the Souls games. What, did the developers not realise how their game worked? If I look onto the Archer, I can't see the Tower Knight unless I stand here. I can't use the function designed for focusing on one
Yay.
person and see everyone else. What, did the B team design this game? Ha 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 ha.
Attacks also lock on to an unnecessary degree. When a boss goes to do an overhead attack, it will usually track the player up until the very last moment before impact.
When Matthew Matosis makes this comment, in order to make an example of a superior fight, he cuts to footage of the Adjudicator, the least memorable fight in the entire Souls series. I forget the Adjudicator exists every time I play Demon Souls without fail, and then I go, oh yeah, this guy, and I kill him on the first try and forget about him again. His attacks go for where you used to be 10 minutes ago. No aspect of this boss should be the model for how fights should work in Souls games. The simple fact is that in previous entries in the series, circle strafing enemies has been an easy way to cheese a lot of the game. Because the enemies focus in on you more, guess what? You actually have to dodge some of their attacks now using timing and knowledge of the right direction to move based on judging how the enemy's moving. A lot of the fights Mr. Matosis, if that is his real name, uses to make examples of this apparent horrific problem actually show him mistiming a dodge, or dodging in the direction of the swing. I don't think this demonstrates what he thinks it's demonstrating. Bosses all over the series lock right onto you as their attack goes off. This happens because on some level the game is about learning how and when to dodge instead of just spin in a circle around someone so they can never hit you. The amount of lock-on enemies have in this game is only a problem if you don't know how to dodge attacks. I honestly think this footage speaks for itself. Here we're getting into the bedrock of some fundamental differences in the way Dark Souls 2 is made, and what it achieves versus the previous game's decisions, both in terms of gameplay and in terms of storytelling. Dark Souls is commonly lauded for being one large interconnected
more
world.
feety.
I criticised this perception a little in the Bloodborne video, and because I'm a hack, I'm going to rehash that here. Dark Souls' interconnectedness is fun and creates an interesting sense of being in a real place, and it's cool you can find ways of getting from one place to another and nice little shortcuts, but it also weakens the game in a lot of ways. Okay, I know that's contentious, I'm not stupid, hear me out here. It's technically a good thing.
that the areas lead across and into each other so much. Blighttown, for example, is made more interesting by the fact it connects both the depths and the Valley of Drakes and the Great Hollow, and it leads to Quelaag's domain, and later is used to access the Demon Ruins. However, let's think for a moment about level design and encounter design. When you're designing a world that can be traversed across to all these different places, or even simply back and forth, in this case climbing out of Blighttown once you first kill Quelaag, you're designing a level that makes compromises to be usable in all these ways at once. No enemy encounter can be designed to play really well in one direction, because you aren't, and encounters all have to compensate for the fact you're going to be coming back through it the other way. In fact, at a certain point, it becomes clear the developers realised they'd forgotten to fully compensate for this. The blow dart guys who inflict toxic on you are basically unavoidable if you're trying to get out, because of the inevitable ladder climbing you have to do. So they made them not respawn, so you only ever have to kill them once, and therefore on your way back out you probably don't have to deal with them at all because you've killed them all. But this also severely compromises the challenge of going down, because it means each blow dart guy only ever has to be dealt with once. You can basically just run to them, die killing them, and then carry on in a now much easier area. By having to account for the fact you're going to have to come back the other way, the fun and challenge of going through it either way is hamstrung. This is not great design. You can even see a more ideal version of Blighttown in Anor Londo. You can only ever fight these enemies this one way, and that means this one way is really interesting. You know, this section's great. There's no way to come back the way you came, but there's also no reason to, because once Anor Londo is beaten, you unlock the ability to warp between bonfires, seemingly an acknowledgement that this area makes no sense going through it backwards to get out. Plus, at this point in the game, the developers had definitely realised that running back and forth between areas is actually really tedious. But because warping wasn't really fully fleshed out in Dark Souls 1, there's an awful lot of needless walking. Walking back to bonfires you already lit but can't warp to, walking through long paths, or walking through still long but slightly shorter paths because this one's technically a shortcut, and then you die and you have to do it again. It's not good. It's not the best it could be. I just want to fight Artorias again. It's a cool fight, but there's like 5 minutes of walking every single time, even with this shortcut. And guess what? If you didn't find the bonfire at the Daughter of Chaos, which, by the way, why would you? Because it's a secret hidden behind an illusionary wall, there's no nearby warpable bonfire for beating the Demon Ruins. So, when it's time to go do that bit, guess what? It's time to go all the way back through Blighttown again! Yeah! Blighttown was so busy leading down into Quelaag's domain and the Demon Ruins and the Great Hollow, leading across into the Valley of Drakes, and leading up into the depths and its own arse, that it forgot to have particularly good gameplay, or to have any frames. Hey, check it out. I didn't even need to invoke Dark Souls 2 to explain why Dark Souls 1's interconnectedness is bad in a lot of cases, but I guess I should since I'm talking about Dark Souls.
I forgot the fucking cheeks!
Dark Souls 2's version of Blighttown, the gutter, is way better designed because it's built to be journeyed through once, in one direction. Once you're in the gutter, it's literally impossible to climb out, actually. You would have to warp, which you can now mercifully do at the beginning of the game, and between any bonfire. It's almost like this game was designed to be played by people who don't want to fucking run around in circles for hours, which is an improvement, I would say, personally. There's a lot of sheer drops and daring leaps. The enemies can be designed purely for this one direction and no other bullshit, like the Beatles, which One Direction are better than. Enemies only stop respawning if you've killed them so many times it's clear they're not really a problem for you and you just need to get back to later bits, instead of immediately never respawning ever again because the developers knew they were a bit rubbish. The treatment of these areas in particular is emblematic, I love that word, of the game's overall approaches to design, and I'm not going to tell you which one is better, but it's obvious. So far I've only talked about world design in terms of the ensuing level design, but that's not the only thing impacted by that. There's also an aesthetic component. And this, I think, is an aspect that most exemplifies the difference in concerns and goals between the first two Dark Souls games in particular. Dark Souls 1's world has, let's call it, a physical coherency to it. If you're standing in a high place and look in a direction, you will see a place you end up going later in the game. The world of Lordran feels like a physically consistent,
No, I can't believe I forgot the blush.
Here's a 3D model of the Dark Souls 1 world. Apart from a few very clearly separated sections, it all physically ties together, which is pretty cool. Meanwhile in Dark Souls 2, this is far from the case. Plenty of places don't make visual sense. You can get to the top of a tower you physically see in the distance, and you can see how tall it is, but then at the tippy top, you find an elevator, and it takes you further up. into nowhere, and you emerge in a lava land that couldn't possibly exist. Theoretically, you could dig a deep enough hole in the ground and all the lava would just flow out into the world below and kill everyone. Remember the compiled 3D model of Dark Souls 1? Here's the model for Dark Souls 2.
Does it look like he's just got really bad dark circles?
It's just, they're in the same place. The universe of Dark Souls 2 is a nonsensical, free associative nightmare in which you find yourself in impossible
I feel insecure about this one!
to other worlds without warning. The world itself falling apart, becoming physically untrustworthy. It's an Overlook Hotel-style monster. People have criticized the game for being like this, but I have a question. How is this a bad thing? The sense of mystery this creates was really compelling to me as I worked my way through the world. I never knew what I was going to see next because I literally couldn't see it coming. Something I enjoyed about Dark Souls 1 was this idea that time itself was beginning to fall apart. You encountered the spirits of those who came before you and died, like you could find their armor on presumably their corpses, and in the DLC you literally go back in time. The Age of Fire was ending, and reality on some level was ending with it. Dark Souls 2 gets to constantly benefit not only from linearity leading to specific visuals along with better planned encounters, but it's pushed up even further by embracing inconsistency. The result is that you're constantly parading through places that feel like they're out of a fantasy film or an 80s album cover. Take for example the Dragon Shrine right here. You get this majestic moment of a secret sky castle. I say that again. Secret sky castle being revealed to you for the first time.
Should I give him angry eyebrows?
From visibility.
I feel like he might need angry eyebrows.
You get this ridiculously epic, in the traditional sense, grandiose shot of a majestic, ornate shrine circled by a dozen dragons, revealing itself to you as you go through a passage. You can't see the shrine from the ground, and you can't see any landmarks on the ground below from here. Concrete cohesiveness is thrown out in favor of a puzzling, surprising, beautiful incohesiveness. We're dealing with two contrasting methods of showing a fantasy world. I say contrasting because, in my opinion, neither is inherently superior. The trouble, I think, is that some either assumed this because the first did, or simply wanted what the first had. And that's not quite the same as judging something on its own merits, but I can still see the point there. I've heard the complaint that Dark Souls 2 is linear. This is true. Many critics then go on to say that this makes it worse than Dark Souls, which was non-linear.
I like the eyebrows.
And I'll see you in hell.
And I'll see you in hell.
Just established, Dark Souls is interconnected. It is not non-linear. This is not semantics, this is a big deal, I swear to God. You have clear-cut objectives that you have to complete in a set order. You can, technically, kill Quelaag first before the Bell Gargoyles. You can also ignore the depths if you want to. But
yeah,
you
can
have
see my
to
hair.
kill these two bosses, you have to ring 2 bells, you have to do Sen's Fortress, and then you do Anor Londo, and then you have to collect 4 Lord Souls to progress, which you can do in any order if you want, but you have to do all of them. This isn't non-linear. This is a choice of which linear path you take first. This sense of linearity is disguised by the interconnectedness and the sense of having to run back and forth through a world because the warps weren't fully fleshed out, but that's
I like
not
him more like
non-linearity.
this. That's plan me.
Actually kind of bad design, masking linearity. At least in Dark Souls 2, you don't technically need to beat all 4 main bosses to unlock the entrance to Drangleic. You can just get a lot of souls. That's actually way more of an alternative than any part of Dark Souls 1. For a hugely entertaining comparison, check out the 2 AGDQ speedruns of the 2 games. Oh, I started with a master key so I can kill the 2 bosses I have no choice but to kill in a slightly different order if I want to. But I'm not going to because it turns out the intended way was faster anyway. Fuck you! I used bonfire aesthetics to kill the Rotten 4 times and skip 3/4 of the main fucking game! See you in shit, Dark Souls! Also, not only could Dark Souls have easily been less linear if it wanted to, the game fucking contrives itself to ensure that it isn't with needless bullshit. Do you want to beat Seath the Scaleless before putting the Lord Vessel on the thing? Nice try, idiot. Impassable magic fog.
Oh, you just beat Quelaag? I want to see what's going on and the obvious path past her that it makes sense to go down instead of climbing all the way back out immediately? Well, fuck you! We put some fucking mist here because we arbitrarily decided you don't get to do this stuff, you gotta do the other things first. See you in 10 to 15 hours, you worthless piss hound. Do you want to see what Mito's up to? Tune in next time when go fuck yourself, idiot! Do you want to kill the 4 kings before doing anything else? Well, guess what? You can. You can get their Lord's Soul first thing if you want to. You just need Artorias' ring from Sif.
Oh my goodness, there's so much freedom in these games.
A similar mechanic is used in Dark Souls 2,
Oh,
but it's with doors
now I like
that are
him.
off the beaten path.
Now
do
I feel
not
less
block the
insecure
most
about him.
obvious form of
He looks
progress,
better,
and
Angie.
you might even forget about them until you get the king's
You
ring
look
and
better when
realize
you're
that's the symbol
mad.
of the king they were talking about. And it's like you figured out a mystery, and you get to watch an ancient fantasy door slowly unlock when you put it on. I like ancient fantasy doors. They're a thing that I'm into. That sounds really weird, but I mean that. I like cool doors. Shut up. They're nice. It's a nice door.
It's a nice door. Anyways, I think I'm gonna be done because I am losing the ability to see as the sun fucking sets. But thanks so much for joining me. That was super fun. I had a great day. That was a great time. Woohoo! We'll sing a goodbye song and then I will fuck off. What song should I sing? I don't know. Oh god. Now I have to pick a song to sing. Oh, that doesn't actually... This is the sound I was making myself and entertaining myself with. The sound of sabs! Yeah, I would like to do it again sometime. Maybe... I don't know. I have to figure out the lighting, because now it's like 7 p.m. and I can't see. And I need to stop because I can't see! I'm sorry, I have a really hard time learning it. I don't know all the words, and it was really, I didn't get it, I'm sorry. A boop. Bust Your Kneecaps by Pomplamoose. Johnny, don't leave me. You said you'd love me forever. Honey, believe me. I'll have your heart on a platter. Might you recall? We've got a small family business, and the family won't like this. Bust your kneecaps. Ooh, up-dee-woo, up-dee-doo. Bust your kneecaps. Ooh, up-dee-doo, up-dee-doo. Jennifer, you told me that you were no fool, you were no chump. You got cold feet. Now all you'll be is a speed bump. It's something we call, oh, just a small family business. And the family won't like this. Well, bust your kneecaps. Ooh, up-dee-doo, up-dee-doo. They'll bust your kneecaps. That's what they're going to do. Johnny, there's still time. Together I know we'd go so far. I'll tell Uncle Rocco to call off the guys with the crowbars. You call it crime, we call it smart family business. And the family is famous. It sort of is in the 1920s, but this was released in 2012. Bust your kneecaps. Ooh, bust your kneecaps. Ooh, it's such a shame that you became such an issue. Oh dear Johnny, I'll miss you. Bust your kneecaps, probably some other stuff too.
They bust your kneecaps. Ooh, whoop-dee-doo, dee-doo. They bust your kneecaps. Oh yeah, they're coming for you. Bust your kneecaps. Ooh, bust your kneecaps. Bust your kneecaps. Ooh, bust your kneecaps. Yeah. Have a good rest of your evening. I'll see you next weekend. Bye bye for today. Goodbye. Thank you so much for stopping by. That was a fun one. Bye.